I do. Two tiny little words that completely changed the course of our lives.
Two became one and drove off into that beautiful happily ever after, shiny and gleaming with hopes and dreams, and maybe a few harmless warning signs.
And as the big day got smaller and smaller in the rear view, the road at times could get a little rough. Speed bumps turned into potholes, turned into...
Is this even a road? One person refusing to ask for directions.
One person saying, "I told you so."
Now those harmless little expectations are suddenly breakdowns and collisions.
Sometimes it feels like happily fell out of the car a couple 100 miles ago, and now we're just stuck with the ever after.
Somewhere along the way, the journey to happiness became just a journey.
But maybe the map was upside down, and we were pointed in the wrong direction all along.
Because no one, not even the kindest, most polite and attractive, dishwashing, laundry folding, door opening, toilet seat lowering, in-law loving traveling companion could ever steer you to the land of true contentment.
Because that's not what they were created to do. The destination of marriage and the reason for the trip is the glory of God.
He fills us with true happiness and contentment, from which we can love and serve without condition, with tanks that never empty, even in stretches of disappointment and unmet expectation.
When, by His power, we display the same unwavering love and devotion that Jesus has for His bride, we glorify Him.
Our marriage and our life are hitting on all cylinders. Joy and intimacy, contentment and happiness are not the destination. They are the things we find along the way.
When we promise to travel as one toward the only true and good destination.
With two tiny little words. I do.
Brian Mosley is the president of Right Now Media. He's passionate about helping people live out their faith in their neighborhoods, offices, schools, homes, and around the world. The 180 people at Right Now Media serve over 20,000 churches, ministries, and Christian business owners with powerful video content that inspires people to action. Brian Mosley.
Hello, and welcome to Marriage Night. My name is Brian Mosley, and I'm going to be your virtual host for this event. And yes, like a lot of things these days, Marriage Night has become a virtual experience, but you're still in store for an amazing night and a great opportunity to invest in your marriage. Last year was our first time to host Marriage Night, and we were blown away by the response. Over 1,000 churches joined us with tens of thousands of couples participating. And this year, you're joined again by tens of thousands of couples in over 1,400 churches. And many of you are gathered in a church building watching this event with other couples from your community. And we hope this is a great night away from home where you can focus on your marriage. There's also many of you watching this from your home. This crazy COVID season has made it more challenging to gather in big groups, so we're thankful for the technology that allows us to reach you wherever you are, in your home or in a church. My wife Julie and I celebrated our 20th anniversary earlier this year. We were married actually on January 1st, 2000, and many of you remember the weirdness of that season. With Y2K, everyone thought that the turn of the century was going to usher in all this chaos. Well, thankfully the wedding went off without a hitch, and now 20 years later we have 4 kids, and like many of you, life is busy. But even though life is busy, we all need the chance to charge up the batteries of our marriage because they can often be running low. Our Right Now Media team has been working hard to make this a meaningful night for you and your spouse. I think you're going to smile and laugh a lot, but I also think you're going to be challenged and reminded about the importance of that person who's sitting next to you. About 3 months ago, when we made the decision to make this a virtual event, we also decided to produce it a little bit differently. Since we didn't have to have teachers on a stage in front of a large crowd, we were able to make it a more unique experience by filming in the homes and allowing their teaching to be more intimate. We are excited about what God's going to do through this event, and our prayer is that God would use tonight in a powerful way in your marriage. In fact, let's get started. Would you pray with me? God, we are grateful to gather here tonight. We're doing it to honor you, to honor our marriages. We pray that these next few hours that we give to you would be meaningful. God, we want to turn them over to you and ask you to do in our lives and in our marriages something powerful. And so we trust you with that. We turn that over to you. We ask that the speakers and the experiences that will happen these next few hours would just be orchestrated by you, and that you would be just present in all the conversations and in all the interactions that we have with our spouses and then as we interact with others around us. God, thank you. We love you. We ask all this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we're going to start tonight with an amazing couple. You're going to love Conway and Jada Edwards.
Dr. Conway Edwards is the founding and lead pastor of One Community Church, and Jada Edwards is the creative arts director at One Community Church. They're both gifted speakers and Bible teachers. They've co-authored several books, including Going Up and When Love's in View. They also have 2 kids, Conway and Jada Edwards.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for your investment in your marriage. What a joy it is. Jada and I are so honored that we're here just to kind of share a couple thoughts about what God has been doing in our lives, and hopefully it will be beneficial to you. So let's start by talking a little bit about how I grew up and what was normal in the house that I grew up in. I grew up in a small house, 4-bedroom house with mom and dad and 2 siblings. What was most exciting about my days was whenever it was dinner time. At dinner time, it was really unique in my house because the way it would work is everybody would come home, dad would come home finally, he'd sit in the couch, he'd sit in it, then he'd be watching television. While watching television, mom, who works a full-time job, would then come home, prepare this incredible meal, prepare a tray, and the tray had decorations. This is every day. This is not once a week. This is every day. And then would come the first course of 3 courses. This is incredible, y'all. And this is what I saw every single day. And so the kids would be around. By the way, if dad wasn't there or dad was out of town, then the kids would get some leftovers, and that's what we do. But when dad was home, which was most of the time, it would be a full-on 3-course meal. I'm telling you, when it was all done, mom would clean everything up, and it would be an immaculate evening. That's the way I grew up. Now, hold one thought. Let's talk about how Jada grew up.
Let's talk about it.
The way Jada grew up, Jada's mom was a nurse. Jada's dad was a business guy with an IT background, and he'd travel a lot for work. So whenever he'd go on travel, he would go to these amazing restaurants. And whenever he found a dish that he enjoyed really well, then he would come home and play Mr. Chef. And he would recreate the entire thing. He would provide the gourmet meal for his family, and then Jada would now go to the table and enjoy one of the most incredibly delicious meals ever created.
Yes.
So now you can imagine.
And then he would clean up.
Oh, he sure would.
In Jesus' name.
Which means you get the picture, don't you? So that means I did nothing for dinner, and Jada did nothing. It was all done for her, the cleanup and everything. Now you can imagine what happened when we got married.
Yeah, it's already
when
funny.
these 2 extroverts get married, come home, and we're looking at each other.
Hungry.
Hey, what are we eating? Where's my
You tell me.
Where's my tray?
I don't know. He said he knew something was wrong when I didn't register for trays. When we got married. He said, you didn't get any
Where are the trays? So
need
you
any
can tell.
trays.
That's what we grew up with, y'all. And so we had to kind of work that out. I had a pathway that I thought would lead to a happy marriage, which is Jada serving me and providing and playing the formal wife role, which is to come and lay out a tray for her wonderful husband that has worked so hard all day long. But when we got married, that was not the case. So I had a pathway that I was going down that I thought led to happiness. And then after 19 years.
That's right. We're slightly making some adjustments. I had a pathway too. I thought, like what you said with my story, I really thought that he is going to be he's a fabulous leader, so all the core things I was drawn to was still there. I was like, and he's going to cook and he's going to clean. And my dad could keep plants alive for years. He was like all domestic and protective and a cook. I was ready for my great life. And I realized that we both played the same role in our homes. But, that was after the wedding. It was too late. We didn't think about that part. So yes, it was an interesting first 5 years, and we're extroverted, so we both attack conflict the same way. So it was robust discussions, to say the least.
It was incredible. But as we suggested earlier, that the path to happiness, we thought, was by Jada doing what I thought she should do, and Jada thinking I was to do what she envisioned and what she saw growing up. And, Genesis chapter 3, Adam and Eve are in paradise. They're in the Garden of Eden, which means a place of delight, a place of pleasure. And when they're there, when they're fully surrendered to God, fully surrendered, then they get to enjoy pleasure and they get to enjoy delight. However, when there are three gods, each person going after what they deem as important for happiness, then you always will have chaos.
Absolutely.
Jada, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think when people say why they want to be married, generally it is tied to their personal happiness some kind of way. And when you say, why do you love this person, or what made you fall in love, you usually list the reasons why they make you happy. Most people don't say, I cannot wait to love sacrificially and be with someone who pushes all my buttons and I'm still going to be gracious and forgiving for the rest of my life. Most of us go, and I know some of y'all are super spiritual, so you went in from the beginning with a vision and God's plan, and you only wanted to serve in love. But most of us the rest of us went in with some notion that this person was going to make me happy. And that idea comes because, as in the garden, we're self-centered. And so we kind of create this pursuit of personal happiness, and we think that our spouse is going to play along with that. And what happens is, in the early stages, the I'm in love and you're so new and you're so fresh stages, it makes sense because this person seems to go along with your plan for personal happiness.
Absolutely.
And then life happens, and life happens for some people in the first month, and some in the first year, first 5 years. Life will happen, and you realize, oh, they have their own plan for happiness. And it just so happened when you're in love and you overlook a lot of things, you think those paths are the same, but they actually are not. But what's interesting is that we often blame our spouses when we're not experiencing happiness, and the truth is that pursuit happened way before we were married. We call it like your dominant device. We all have dominant devices, or you may call it your happiness driver, or your dominant life principle. And that is just like the devices that we use every day. We have our tablets and our phones and our laptops. You have your device of choice, and it's your tool that helps you navigate life. Some of you know how you feel if your device is not charged, or if you leave it at home. You're like, oh, I don't even know what my name is. And so our dominant devices are the same way. They're tools that we've picked up along the way that help us pursue a happy life. And for most of us, it started as we were children. And so I think about not only my home life with my parents, I think about some significant things that happened in my childhood. Things that you were rejected for, things that you were accepted for, those become kind of informants to how you're going to navigate and pursue happiness. So for me, I remember a big rejection. I was on the bus stop one day, and my mother, who is not a shopper or fashionista, as Conway says, she's a nurse. So she wears scrubs all day. She's not into all that. She had bought some clothes, and I needed some parachute pants. Now I'm dating myself. But I had these parachute pants that I thought were so amazing. And I get on the bus stop, y'all, and the kids looked at me and they were like, what do you have on? I said, these are parachute pants. How do you not know this? And they were like, no. Those pants just have zippers. That's not the official parachute pant, because they had to be placed the right way. You know, just like anything. You have the official and you have the knockoff. And I will never forget that. I was in the 6th grade. And I was like, oh, I'll never be made fun of for my clothing. So that became a thing. I was like, I don't want to be rejected for that, right? And then on the flip side, I was accepted for achievement, for being witty, for being intellectual, for being young for my age. I started school and finished school young. So all of these things built into this path where, for me, my dominant devices became acceptance and approval. And usually there's more than one. So if I'm widely accepted, but I don't get approval when I come home from him, it doesn't even feel the same. Or if he says it's great and everybody else doesn't say it's great, it doesn't feel the same, because we're just jacked up that way. And so this idea of your dominant driver really is the key to figuring out how you have pursued happiness. And it shapes who you are as an adult. It shapes who I am as an adult before I got married and as a spouse. That means when we have disposable income, I want to buy clothes, right? That means that, you know, if I do well, I have to work really hard to hear God's voice of approval and not everybody else's. It just shapes everything. And so conflict comes whenever he is not on my page to pursuing happiness. And I know you had some stories like that too, Conway, as a child.
I've got a lot of them.
We have a lot.
This concept of this dominant life principle, this this dominant device that drives everything. All our actions are driven by it. And so for you, it might be pleasing people. For you, it might be peace and just this place of comfort. For you, it might be money or success. For you, I don't know what it is for you, but one of the things we want you to do is discern what that is, because it affects all your decisions, and it also affects your interaction with each other. And so for me, I've got two big ones. One was this whole issue of money, and growing up in a place where my parents had very little money. For me, it was a vow that I made that I'd say I'd never be poor, and it drove all my decisions. It drove all my decisions to get as many degrees that I have, because I thought that was the way to never be poor again. And so with Jada, a lot of things that we fight about, its root is found in me either wanting to make money at some level, or number two, for me, was success. I remember growing up, both my sisters are older than I was, and they went through school with a breeze, and it was a little more difficult for me, a little more challenging for me. And so I remember my mom making me take these extra classes, and I'm like, why do I have to take all of these extra classes? Nobody else did. And then I ultimately began to crave this desire to prove that I will be successful and that things will go well with me. And therefore, when we got married, the issue of this dominant thing driving everything we did affected every area of our marriage. It affected, well, no, you can't buy anything because we have to have enough money to save.
Who says that?
I do. But
he does.
That
all the time.
But it happens, right? And it determined and defined who we were and how we related to each other until we identified what those dominant things were for us. And then we started working through it as we grew through that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's fascinating because when you think about marriage scriptures, I mean, we love Ephesians, we love Genesis, but actually James 4, 1-3 says this: what causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and you quarrel. You don't have because you don't ask. You ask and don't receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your passions. And so James is talking to all believers, and this is a principle I think is the evidence of when we have that dominant driver, we've left God as our primary delight, and he's saying all it does is create conflict. And here's the thing, you can probably look back over your life and see where it's created conflict before your marriage.
Absolutely.
It's just that in your job and with your teachers and your parents, they love you and they let you make it, and you don't live with them. And so you get married and this person's reminding you that you kind of jacked up. That's like not normal thinking. And you're like, how does the whole world not think the way I think? And so James is saying it creates conflict. Look, he's saying your passion and your pursuit of pleasure actually creates disunity. And in your marriage, the person you're spending the most amount of time with, the person who sees all of your vulnerabilities, that disunity feels exponentially greater than when you have disunity with your boss or disunity even with a sibling. Everything is extremely sensitive, and so you have quarrels because you're pursuing passions, your spouse is pursuing passions, and it's creating disunity. He says, look, you get so upset because you desire, you don't have, and so you murder. And I know y'all are like, oh yeah, move to the next one because I'm not a murderer. But let me tell you, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 22, Jesus said anger is what makes us commit murder. So he said, even if you don't murder, if you're angry with your brother, just count it the same, because the heart is really the issue. And how angry have we been because our spouse did not get our viewpoint? Because he wouldn't give me the extra to go buy the shoes I need to buy, not because I need the shoes, but I got baggage about the shoes, right? So it's all of these things that, or when I think I did something well, when he doesn't pat me on the back, you know, when he's a critical feedback giver. So he's more like, you know what you did right. Let me tell you all the things you can do better next time. I'm like, but can we just say all that went right first? And he's like, no, nobody has time for that. So all these things, they become sources of conflict, right?
That was for me a drive because that's how I grew up. I grew up in,
with critical
my
feedback,
parents knew, my parents said, we taught you, we trained you, we developed you, so we know you know what's right. So let me just tell you the bad that you need to correct. And so for me, when I'm like, I know what's good, I just want to fix what's bad. So with Jada, I just just told her everything that was wrong, and I hesitated to tell her the things that was right. Just say, you know, I love you, so deal with that. That's good. Yeah. But here's what you need to fix to be this perfect person.
Right.
And that's a lot of the tension that we had to work through early on.
I think feedback might be your love language.
Well, it is a gift. Feedback is a gift.
It is to some, and you can't return it though. You get it, you have it forever. So yeah, we have a lot of differences, right? And it creates conflict. And I laugh because I think about those first 5 years of marriage, and it felt like, especially with two extroverted, explosive personalities, it felt like everything was the verge of divorce. It was door slamming and I can't, and yelling and crazy. And now I'm like, what were we fighting about? Right. I can't even remember a specific incident. It just was craziness because it's a stark realization when this person is not on your path for happiness. And here's the thing, I think in some ways, I feel blessed that we were both extroverted enough where ours came to a boiling point very quickly because we just are wired that way. But in most of your marriages, there's either one or two passive people. Right. Their personalities are more introverted. Yeah. So it may take years for you to realize that you've been pursuing your own path before your spouse actually rubs up against that and creates tension. So anyway, James says you got to be careful with that. You're envious and you're jealous because we compare and we want our spouse to do what makes us feel good. And so it creates tons of tension and disunity. And so here's the bottom line. Our pursuit of happiness is costly. It creates conflict in our relationships and it distracts us from our real delight, which should be in the Lord. Absolutely. And I think you spoke to that in Genesis 3. So I think there's a lot to chew on that. We're still chewing on it.
Absolutely.
So, for sure.
Well, and it impacts you when you have kids. The more kids you have, for me, again, growing up, it was, I wanted our kids to go to private school because I went to private school, and I wanted them to get the best education because that's the way out of poverty. And everything was driven by that. Jada was like, I didn't go to private school, and I was fine. And so why do we need it? And so there was a big, not a little, a big tension there. And I'm like, no, they're going to private school. And Jada was like, no, they're going to public school. And there you have it, right?
They're in private schools. I feel like that's evidence of my submission. Should we put that? I think we should just document that for the people.
That's reasonable, I think, for that.
Okay.
But
but you know what? It always also comes with our kids. I'm thinking about how I love approval. I remember coming to peace with, you know what? He's just not wired that way. And then we had our son, y'all. Listen, my son walks in the door. He's like, champion of the world. You're the best boy. And I say, oh, he does know how to be a cheerleader. It wasn't for me. So that has been funny because we've talked about that. And I'm like, oh. And I think it's just what drives you. You can conjure up things that are not even natural to you for your kids and not do it for your spouse. And that doesn't mean he loves me less. It's just like you're trying to pour into your kids for this season. But if I'm unhealthy, I'm equating everything as disapproval. And so,
One of the things I think we also need to remember here is that there's some needs only God can ultimately meet. Only God can ultimately meet some needs. The need of, for example, the need of acceptance, security, purpose, and identity, as Jimmy Evans argues, can only be ultimately met by God. And in light of that, we must make sure we're on the path to getting those from God before we try to squeeze it out of our spouse. Now, once you get that from God, then you can, in a healthy way, provide those and meet those needs of your spouse. But now you're doing it over that overflow, and you're not doing it to get something out of them that you have not yet gone to God for. And I think that's vital if we're going to remain healthy as we choose to love our spouses as God has called us to.
Yeah. Speaking of going to God, that's a great segue.
All right.
Psalm 139, one of my favorite passages, which I think I say that about almost every passage. But David says this. He says, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You know my thoughts from afar. You search out my path. You know my lying down. You're acquainted with all my ways." He establishes at the beginning of the 139th Psalm that God knows everything about him. He says, "You've searched me and you've known me." But this is what's interesting. At the end of that Psalm, the last two verses, verse 23 and 24, he says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. So he's saying, you've searched me and known me, but then search me, oh God. Well, clearly at the end of the psalm, he's not saying, search me, God, because you need to know me more. God already knows. He is saying, God, I need you to search me and know me and show me myself. I need you to try my anxious thoughts, my grievous ways, and then lead me in righteousness. And so some calls to action that we would love to leave with you. And by the way, this is a journey. It doesn't matter how great your notes are. This is like lifelong journey. Next year is year 20, and we still are working really hard on it. So, but 3 things I think you can take from that passage, or 2 things from that passage, and then a last thing. Number 1 is to search your story, because very often we start trying to resolve things in the now, in today, and today is only just a little bit of the fruit of something that you've been pursuing your whole entire life. And so, be like David. Ask God, search me, God, know me, try my thoughts, see what's grievous, see what grieves you, because what grieves God is us finding delight in other things. And I guarantee you it's going to start to uncover those dominant devices. God will start to show you what he already knows about you, and in his grace, he'll show you what you don't know about yourself, and you can begin to unpack that. The second thing in that is discover your device, right? That's the anxious way or the grievous way. Figure out what has been your substitute for your delight in God. Ask God to show you how you've been pursuing that before your spouse came along. Your spouse might just be, an innocent victim in all of this. Because number 3, it leads us to the third thing. Then you can set your spouse free. You can look at them and say, you don't have to make me happy. Like what a release, what a freedom, a gift to give our spouses to say, my joy, my contentment, my delight is in the Lord. And anything you do for me is extra, but I don't need it, right? So search your story, know your device, and then set your spouse free. And the perfect example of this came because we were able to sneak away and take a little family vacation. And y'all, our son is obsessed with Disney World. Somebody told him Disney World was great. We tried to keep it a secret, but somebody told him. So he's like, I got to go to Disney World. It's the happiest place on earth. And we were like, no. So we finally, this year, went to Florida to take a vacation. But we're all like trying to stay in the same house and not leave the house and everything. And y'all, we were in Orlando, Florida with another family and another friends and some family. And we were there for several days. We didn't leave the house. We just played and swam and had fun. And my son had the time of his life. And on the way home, we told him we were in the same city as Disney World.
5 minutes away.
I think if he could have left, he looked at us like it was the ultimate betrayal. But I said, but you just told us that you just had the greatest week ever. I said, did you have the greatest week ever? And he was like, yeah, I did. I said, yeah, because what you thought you were going to get at Disney, you really found just by being with your friends and family. And when I think about that, I think our relationships and our marriages are the same way. We're like demanding that our spouse be Disney, make us happy, make us happy. And God is saying, listen, you can just have community and fellowship with me and find joy you didn't even know was out there. And guess what? You could be right next door to Disney and then you're not needed for anything. Now, if your spouse gives you some Disney, that's great. That's extra, but you don't need it. You need the fellowship and the community with God. So we want to encourage you today to search your story, know your device, and then you can set your spouse free.
Isn't that the truth?
Amen.
Luke 10:27 also reminds us that actually God has given us a dominant life principle or a dominant device. And he says it this way. He says, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your soul. And then he says, and you must love your neighbor as yourself. Well, your spouse is your closest neighbor. And we have the opportunity and the privilege to allow that to drive us and not the things that we either had and we wanted more of or the things we did not have in our past. And so one of the beautiful things about marriage is that we get to grow in our love for God and we get to test how much we love God in our love for our spouse. And that's what the Bible challenges us to do, to make the Great Commission and the Great Commandment what's vitally important, that drives us. And in this sense, it's how do I love God with all my heart and then demonstrate that in my love for Jada. And I think that's the beautiful part of it. So much so that, would you believe it, I really do now love to cook. I really do.
Listen,
Won't he
have
do
a
it,
moment
y'all?
of praise?
Yeah, just a moment of praise and worship right there.
He cooks.
But now I cook. Now I lay it
Like,
all
I have
out.
to call and say, are you doing dinner? And am I doing dinner? And sometimes the Holy Spirit is just like, see? See?
That's what will happen.
Y'all, trust him in the name.
So now, yesterday, I laid it all out. The family came. It was a great time. And I'm even surprised myself that I have learned the art. When my dad comes to visit now, he's like, who is this man? I don't know who he is.
Redeemed. That's who he is.
Because when you make loving the Lord your God with all your heart, your dominant principle, learning from your past, and then seeing the joy that I have to reflect that love for God in my love for Jada and the family, now it's easy for me to love them and serve them, no longer out of duty, but out of gratitude for God's love for me. And what we're hoping and what we're challenging each one of you for is to follow these three as you discern your own story, as you try to discern what is my dominant life principle, as you surrender that to God, and then free your spouse so that now you can serve them because of God's love for you. You have now the privilege of loving them like they've never been loved before.
That's a good word.
Ma.
There's hope for all of us, too. Can I just say that now, I just did something, we did something not too long ago where I had to do a speaking part, and y'all, it was bad. When I did it, I knew it was bad. And I came home and I told my husband, I said, that was bad, I gotta redo that whole thing. He was like, oh no, it's fine. I mean, you can redo it, but it wasn't that bad, it's fine. And I was like, no, it was pretty bad. And so then I was laughing because I was like, I'm the one that loves approval. I'm sitting here arguing how bad the thing was, and he's giving me approval. And it's just, over time, you start saying, I know my spouse loves me. Number one, I know God loves me. That's my approval. I know my spouse loves me. And so I can be free to critique myself, and we can have an honest discussion, and I can actually get better, and we don't have to waste time with like the applause because I need some affirmation. And so all those little things, you know, whether it's cooking or not needing affirmation like you used to, I think to your point, go back to that Genesis, it's moving us slowly back toward that Genesis delight.
Both parties surrender to God. There's one God in the garden, not three. But when you become your own God, choosing your own path to happiness, then you're going to allow the other person to become almost like your slave and trying to get them to do what you want to do so that you can pursue happiness. God says if there are three gods, then there's going to be chaos. There's only one. Both parties fully surrendered to him. Hope this helps.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Doctors Les and Leslie Parrott share a passion for helping people build healthy relationships. Leslie is a marriage and family therapist, and Les is a clinical psychologist. They are founders of the Center for Healthy Relationships at Seattle Pacific University. As New York Times best-selling authors, their books have sold over 2 million copies, including the award-winning Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts. Les and Leslie Parrott.
Hey, you guys, Les and Leslie here in Seattle, from our home to yours, and in these kooky times, but it's so good to be with you. And I remember, a year ago, we were with Right Now, doing this in a big church and having people tune in. And first of all, I just got to say, shout out to Right Now for being nimble and flexible and making this work for everybody.
We are so delighted that it's happening, and we all have to be nimble and flexible right now. Resiliency is the only way to survive, right?
That is the truth. What a year. 2020, we will never, ever forget it, will we? And can't wait to have it behind us. So we want this time to be practical and helpful to you. We're going to have some couples join us here in just a minute and really take some questions in real time that I think will be germane and relevant to all of us.
Absolutely.
Because these are going to be real couples on the front lines of marriage. But we're just so grateful. And I just thought, before we get started in this, we got to have a little bit of fun. And I wish that I had like a band behind me that we could, start up some game show music, because I want to do a little game here for you. So get ready, get your thinking caps on. And then I thought, well, I could just play the guitar myself and kind of get us going on this. And I heard, was it Jimmy Fallon? I think I've seen him do a couple of songs that he's written through the whole pandemic thing that have been hilarious, and Adam Sandler and others. And I thought, I got to do that for Right Now. And so I thought to get started, I would do that. And then it occurred to me that I'm not a musician. I don't play the guitar. I don't sing. And you're going, well, why are you holding a guitar? Yep. Well, it's because it's my son's guitar, who is 16, and I've tried to keep up with him. I can't. Now, here's the embarrassing thing. I actually bought this thing. Can you see that? That's called a chord buddy. And you put your fingers on it and you can strum it. It kind of sounds like you're playing the guitar.
It's a cheater chord.
It is. And our son Jackson, doesn't think that's too legit. But anyway, I'll forego the music, and I want to just kind of this is a game we started here at the front end of COVID.
Yeah, actually, one of the highlights has been time for games, time for shared fun time, right? Together. And so this game got our thinking caps on.
Yeah, and it was one of those that came, I think, at Christmas in a stocking, and we hadn't played it. And once you play it, you can't play it again. It's called Say What You See. So I'm going to put a little thing, this first one, and this is just for you guys to play at home, see between you as a couple who can get the answer first. But I'm going to give you an example. So here's the first one, just as a sample. This isn't for the records. So you look at that and you try to make sense and decipher what does that mean. All right, and I'm going to give you another 3 seconds. You have any idea the phrase that might be? Well, it's tall order, all right? Tall order. There you can see the answer on the back. But so I'm going to give you, I don't know, a half dozen of these. So you can keep score there at home real fast. We'll just do a few of these to have a little fun.
So the game is say what you see, literally. You figure out, what am I seeing?
So you as a couple, just do this real fast, and then we're going to get into the content. So this is something, well, I'm going to put it up there. Take a look. And the first one that thinks they have the answer, just say it out loud. We should have some door prizes for this. This is something that we've had quite a bit of during the COVID season, and it is,
at least in our home.
It's leftovers. All right, you get that? That's leftovers. All right, here's another one. This is something we all wish we could be doing right now, I think. So take a look at that. What is that? You got it? I know some of you are getting it right away. Some people's minds just click into this. Well, this is travel overseas. Don't you wish you could do a little traveling? We're all scared to death to get on airplanes. At least most of us are these days. And this is a good one. These are all so simple once you see them. But you got that? Just shout it out if you got the answer. You got it? Something you might enjoy for breakfast. It's scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs. Couple more here. This is something that we've all needed to practice during the COVID crisis together as we're locked up in our homes. Got it? This one is a little bit more challenging for some of us. This is forgive and forget. Do you see it? Forgives and forgets. Forgive and forget. All
this
right.
one we should all be competitive about, right? I'm going to win with my forgives and forgets.
That is for sure. Here's the last one. And I like this one.
Yeah, you do like this one.
This is something I request frequently from Leslie. It's a back rub, right? Back rub. So there you go. So I hope you won. If we could give out like a bottle of hand sanitizer as a gift or something, if we could reach through the camera here. But anyway, hopefully you guys are hanging in there and doing well through this whole incredible season.
Yeah, right? And it does take a sustained dose of hope to hang in there and do well during this season.
Yeah, if we could pass along one thing to you, it would be more hope. We need it, right? Yeah. It's the only thing that's more contagious than a contagion is hope in a home.
Yeah.
And so I hope that you are keeping that hope alive in your lives in the midst of all the craziness that we're all going through. But as I said, we want to dedicate this time to some really practical helps for you guys. And so we wanted to just invite some of you to ask us questions, and we're going to jump into these topics. And I know we have a couple kind of queued up, Mark and Hannah, correct? And Mark and Hannah, are you guys with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're here.
Awesome. So good to see you guys. Now, where are you guys located?
We are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, a little bit on the outskirts in Wiley, Texas.
And how is 2020 treating you? Stupid question, right?
I was kidding anyway.
No, it's a slow year.
What's been some of the biggest challenges? You have kids?
Yeah, we have 2 boys. Jackson is 10, and Xander will be 8 this month.
That's awesome. So we have 2 boys as well, and in fact, one of them is named Jackson. So we have some simpatico there.
It's a high energy home at this stage, it sounds like.
Yeah, you could say that.
Especially both with ADHD.
Yeah, they're both diagnosed ADHD.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Wow, we better stop and have prayer meeting for you guys right now. That's a lot. And are you homeschooling, or what's happening now that school is beginning to start?
We've signed up, and we checked, and there's no givesies backsies, but we signed up for the first 9 weeks to be virtual, and then we emailed the principal about the week after asking if we could give them back.
This is resiliency, adjusting.
Yeah, and so it's they don't show us the same respect they show their teachers.
So which one of you, Hannah, do you do more of the teaching? Is it more Mark or what?
We let the teachers do the teaching, but we're in the room off to the side, listening and watching, making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we step in if we need to. But
You're proctoring. I get it.
She does 80%.
if they have questions, I'm usually the one that goes over and helps them out.
I get you. Now, how about work? Are you guys working from home, or how's that?
Yeah,
Both of us.
full time. Yeah.
Both full-time working at home and managing these 2 busy boys studying at home.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're in it.
Yeah. I'm guessing there's a few folks out there that can identify with your. So can I get an amen out there? Yeah, I know. And we have folks, of course, joining us from all over the place across North America and even beyond here with Right Now. And so I'm glad that you can kind of dip into this with us and talk to us a little bit about what's going on for you. What's been the biggest challenge, or what's like a question that is percolating to the top that we might be able to answer for you as it relates to especially marriage?
Yeah, I think, I think we both just, we pride ourselves on our communication and be able to handle conflict well. However, when you throw kids into the mix and, 40 hours a week into the mix and quarantine into the mix, there's just a lot of cabin fever, and that can create a lot of conflict. And I think that's just our thing is like, how do we, for lack of better words, how do we fight well when we fight, and how do we, show our kids, because we can't really go anywhere to fight or go anywhere to communicate and discuss and for the communication, like the kids are right there. And so it's challenging. We're not perfect at it, obviously. So that would be our main.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you manage conflict in the midst of COVID and all that we're going through? And this thing you describe as conflict, we haven't had that before. So tell us more. No, I'm just kidding you. Of course, right? This is such a thing. Is it quarantine conflicts? Is that?
Quarantine quarrels, if you want to get clever. Right. And we've all experienced them because we are locked in together.
Everybody can identify, in the midst of this. And in fact, the research has shown, we're pretty much tuned into the marriage research and what's happening in the midst of this. Period is conflict is on the rise for sure. Couples are stepping on each other's toes because we're literally occupying the same space for longer periods of time and so forth and adjusting to the anxiety. Anytime you have more anxiety, you have more tension. It's just inevitable. And so that's what kicks us into the fight or flight kind of response, or sometimes freeze. Right. Yeah. Where we just get stuck. But so Hannah, what's the last thing you two had a fight about? What was like the hot topic, or one that you can remember?
One of us had a meeting and the other one was trying to work, and we were trying to get it all done while the kids were like, "Hey Mom, can you come help me with this?" I'm like, "You go do it." "No, you go do it."
Yeah. Yeah. Having dual meetings at the same time, or if I'm out of town, I was out of town for like a whole week, which was honestly great for me. It was fantastic. And so it's just coming home that next week, trying to be a little bit more, flexible, but still like putting my headphones on and working.
No, we can't wear the headphones.
Can't wear the headphones. I can't wear it.
You do, but you shouldn't be.
I know, I should.
I can't wear my headphones because I need to have an ear open for the kids, just in case they're getting in trouble or need help.
Yeah, you have no choice but to be multitasking 100% of your day. Yeah.
And I'm not a multitasker at all. She can attest to that.
And then have you guys struggled with the fight, like when you have the tension, like you said, the kids are listening in, where do you go to have your fight? What have you been doing that has not been working so well for you? Is it that you're stifling the frustration, or are you just letting it out there and the kids are like picking up the pieces, or what's happening?
The problem is we're so communicative that we don't try to hide it.
Yeah, and we know we want to show our kids an authentic marriage, and so I think it's
probably brings the stress level up in the house a little bit.
Yeah, both the kids are anxious kids. I'm anxious. She's not as anxious as I am, but so we have 3 men or boys in the house that are just constantly
full of anxiety.
To where like our oldest son will actually like say, "Can we just stop and have a family hug?"
Yeah.
The kid's asking for a timeout.
Well, he asks for a family hug.
Yeah.
Well, I love this question, and it's a perfect question to start our segment with because conflict is just so inevitable. You know, a year ago when we were speaking in the live event with Right Now, we talked some about conflict, and we had, our book, The Good Fight, and we were getting into the things like sharing withholds and some other things. But as we've looked at the research in the midst of COVID, we know that there's some ingredients that you really got to drill down on. But let's just acknowledge, first of all, conflict it's normal, right? There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no reason to feel guilty about having conflict. My favorite verse in all of Scripture on conflict, Romans 12, verse 18, says, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, try to live at peace with everyone, right? And I like that verse so well because I don't know of another verse in all of Scripture that has more qualifiers in it than that, because it's, even Scriptures it's saying, hey, if it's possible, try, give it a shot, do what you can, but you're gonna have conflict. It's just a part of life, and especially during these trying seasons.
Well, and I love your commitment to authenticity because we know that conflict actually does lead to deeper intimacy.
Right.
So the goal is not to avoid conflict, it's to be savvy about how we navigate conflict.
Yeah, as we've said, if you've ever heard us speak before on conflict, you've heard us say conflict is the price we pay for a deeper level of intimacy, right? Sure. That's the whole message. I have some of our books here, but the whole message of the Good Fight is that you can actually have a fight that brings you together. Now, there's different kinds of fights. There's bad fights that pull us apart.
For sure.
There's good fights that bring us together. That's what we're going to major on here in our answer to you. And then there's, of course, just dumb fights, that we have. Like, really? We're fighting about that again? Leave don't open the packages. I just cleaned the thing, there's COVID all over them or whatever, There's just sometimes some, at this stage, dumb fights, and maybe they're not so dumb, but you get the idea. We want to have good fights. Right. That's what we want to major on.
Yeah, and one thing we know is that the research actually gives us a pathway toward the core of what a good fight is.
Yeah, in fact, when we were looking at all of the studies, the academic studies, the peer-reviewed journal articles that nobody else except, marriage nerds like us read, we were we were in our study and we were trying to say, what are the ingredients that go into a good fight that'll bring you closer together? And we realized that it was coming down to these 4 stacks of studies. And Leslie, more prophetically than she really knew at the time,
for sure,
stood up and she said, well, there it is. She says, that's the core of a good fight right there. And I say prophetic because what we realized is it really is the core, C-O-R-E. This is so easy to remember. We're always trying to make it easy, put the cookies on the bottom shelf. So for Mark and Hannah and everybody else that's coping with conflict in the midst of quarantine and everything else, think of these 4 things, core of a good fight. The first one is cooperation.
Yeah, it's all about cooperation. It's just so easy in the midst of any stress, but COVID-19, whatever it is, to start to feel like we're on opposite teams, like we're against each other. The cooperation is to remember, hey, the enemy is what we're trying to rally together so we can survive this on the same team, and we're cooperating. And it just changes the grit of the fight.
And that's the challenge, because we think oh, you're the opponent.
Right.
But no, we're on the same team just trying, and the thing that we're frustrated about, that's the opponent, right? We're going to resolve that. So it starts with a cooperative spirit, which is easier for some of us than it is for others. It comes easier for you than it does for me.
Yeah, I'm
I know
not
that.
such a competitive soul, but
Right.
some people just are hardwired that
I'm
way.
a competitive fighter. I like to win, right? And so anyway, that's the first one for CORE, C-O-R-E, cooperation. Ownership is the second one. Now, this has to do with owning your piece of the pie.
Yeah.
It's a sense of humility, right? That, hey, I may not be causing all of the conflict right now, but I know I'm probably contributing to it, okay? I own that. And that's an important part of this because humility goes a long way in these ingredients.
Yeah, and no matter what the issue is, rather than trying to do the natural human thing about blaming and shaming, you started this, you weren't paying attention,
Right.
whatever it is, you were being careless. It's owning what can we do now to regroup. And so it's humility, but it's also sort of just this resourceful attitude. We're not blaming, but we're owning.
Yes, and so again, easier for some of us than it is for others to own that. I have a friend who says humble pie is a pastry that's never tasty, and that's the truth. To swallow your pride, to set that aside in order to have a good fight is key. And then the third, C-O-R, R is for?
The R is all about respect. And when it comes to, a good fight, respect is absolutely like the holy ground of a good fight.
Yeah.
Because if you don't convey that, even when things are crazy and chaotic and your emotions are escalated, then the fight distances you rather than bringing you close.
Yeah, and there's research. There's a colleague here in Seattle where we live, John Gottman, who's done incredible yeoman work on conflict over the last 40 years. And he zeroes in on something called contempt and says, I remember we had lunch with him one day. He said, you guys, contempt is like pouring poison onto your relationship. And contempt is anything that makes you feel about that tall. Any belittling remark, it's usually sarcastic, way to go, genius, way to go, Einstein, or even just rolling our eyes, those kind of contemptuous things, so toxic to the relationship. Respect is just the opposite of that.
Right.
All right. So cooperation, ownership, respect. And then the last one, the E, C-O-R-E, is empathy. Mm-hmm. Empathy. And man, I wish that we could hand this off to everybody that's tuned into this event with us today, because it is empathy, of course, first of all, is that capacity to put ourselves in each other's shoes. Right? Now, when was the last time you worked on doing that in your relationship, right? Because that's a really intentional thing. It doesn't happen automatically. It's not part of our nature to just, I want to make sure I'm seeing it from your perspective all the time. We just don't think that. We want them to see it from our perspective. So empathy is a real grace gift that we can give one another in the midst of this tense time and when we're having conflict. And empathy, I often tell my counseling students, huge difference between sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
Sympathy is staying on the shore and throwing out a life ring to somebody that's struggling in the water. And every decent human being does that. Everybody tuned into this event right now would do that. Empathy, not so much. Empathy, more risky. That's jumping into the water, risking your own well-being to bring that person back to shore.
Right.
And that's so rare. What do we call those people? We sometimes call them heroes, right? And it's just as heroic when we do that in our marriage, to put ourselves in each other's shoes. When was the last time you did that for me, by the way?
I think I did that for you with your neck ache recently.
You did, that's the truth.
But when you feel felt, literally, it is transforming. And that's what happens with empathy.
Yeah.
You know somebody is holding your experience with you and you're not alone in it. And that changes everything.
The happiest couples, and by the way, the research is showing us there is a lot on just mountains of tension, more than ever, even for newlyweds. The marriage rate is still, love is still progressing, right? People are still getting married, and they're getting married with masks on and all that. But the research, I just found this out within the last week or so, that the tension that newlyweds are experiencing right now is higher than it's ever been because of so many unexpected things that most couples don't have to start off with in their marriage and so forth, but at any age or stage. And so the happiest couples in the midst of all this crisis are those that are enjoying mutual empathy.
Right.
It's a huge gift. And so those are the four things, C-O-R-E. I got to tell you a quick story. Stephen Curtis Chapman, the award-winning musician, good friend, he was in Seattle just before the crisis happened in the early part of this year. And he invited us to his concert, and we went to the theater, and we went backstage, and we're seeing him. He goes, "Hey, I wrote a song for you guys this afternoon." I said, "You're kidding me. This is incredible." And he goes, "Well," he said, "wait until you hear the song." And so he really can't play the guitar. He got his guitar, and we're backstage, and he starts to sing it, and it wasn't quite finished, but we got the idea. And it was all about the core of a good fight. But it was a humorous take on it. And so his 4 letters were a little different than cooperation, ownership, respect, and empathy. I think the C stood for cursing. And it went on from there. You get the idea. So but that idea of having a goal of what do we need to focus on to have a good fight can be really helpful. It can also be super discouraging because, and Mark and Hannah, I don't know if you feel this, when we list off those things, do you have a sense of like, okay, so next time we have a fight about wearing headphones or who's going to help the kid in this situation, I'm going to go, hey, wait a second, let's do this core thing, It just doesn't work that way, right? That's not how real life happens. So let me hand off a little practical help on this. Think about those 4 things: cooperation, ownership, respect, and empathy. And ask yourself, which of these 4 comes easiest? I'm going to ask you, Mark and Hannah, which of these come easiest for each of you as individuals in just a second. But you want to lift out that one that comes easiest for you, because when you pull that off the shelf in the midst of a conflict, that's good enough.
Right.
That's good enough.
Yeah, the amazing thing about these ingredients, the core of the fight, is that each one is sort of synergistic. Each one leads to the other. And there's a power in that. Right. So whenever Les just offers me a big slice of his ownership and humility, man, it leads to respect and all those other things.
They're contagious. Right.
Yeah, and not only is there synergy, but then he draws me in, because God has created us with mirror neurons so that when our spouse gives us that gift, we mirror it right back.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing because it really is a good contagion, right?
Yeah.
To get from each other.
Best kind.
And so, so let me ask you, Hannah, first, as you think about cooperation, ownership, respect, and empathy, is there one of those that you go, I tend to have a lot more on this than the other 3?
Cooperation.
Cooperation, having that cooperative spirit.
I love that, because you realize Mark is not the enemy. We're in this stress together and you're working together. That's amazing.
That's huge. So, and how about you, Mark? Which one comes easiest for you?
I think I would hope it was like ownership. Like I think
That's the one I would have picked for you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great when you can see it in your spouse too.
Yeah.
And so now it's like canned goods in your pantry. You pull one of those out, and the others will tend to eventually. It's like they're attached with a string, and they'll tend to come. But that's our answer to you guys on how do you fight a good fight, not a bad fight, but a good fight. How do you do that? It's by drilling down on those 4 practical ingredients. Don't get overwhelmed. They're all doable. But don't get overwhelmed, because it's the one that you do the best that you want to lean into.
Right.
So many times in life we want to say, which one are you not so good at? You really need to work on that. That's not the case here. Lean into the one that you're really doing well with. So does that make sense, Mark and Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I hope, you're going to continue to have fights. Then that's normal. The goal is not to get rid of fights. It's to fight good fights. And like we said, just as a reminder, conflict is the price we pay for a deeper connection if we know how to fight a good fight. So I hope that's helpful. And I really appreciate you guys joining us today and talking a little bit about that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we have another couple, and they're going to join us now, and it's Kaylin
and Kyra.
Kaylin and Kyra, are you guys there?
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Awesome.
Hey, guys.
Hey. And where are you guys? Are you guys in Texas too?
Yes, we're in Farmers Branch. We actually just moved here a week before they shut the country down, so quarantine has been pretty fun as well.
Wow. So what a transition you've been through. And so are you guys, how long have you guys been married?
We've been married
about 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of newlyweds.
Yeah, I would still consider us newlyweds. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And finding your way. And do you have a baby or?
Yeah. So we actually have 2 boys. We have a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old.
Oh wow!
Wow.
You do have a baby and a toddler.
Yeah, we moved here when the youngest was only 2 months old. So it's been wild.
You're in the thick of it. My goodness. And so. Obviously, it's a silly question to ask, well, how's 2020 going for you guys? We all know it's not going well for most of us, but what's been the biggest hurdle for you guys, or the biggest kind of like, in addition to having to move and then face that,
stress,
right?
Yeah.
Are you guys feeling like you're getting through it okay, or is it, are you just like worn out like so many of us are?
It's been an interesting transition for us. We got married at 19, and we've been working from home for the past 3.5 years. So the quarantine isn't different in that it's not something that we're used to. It's just weirdly isolating. Obviously, we haven't been able to be around our community, none of our friends, and we just have a lot more to talk about now, but a lot less experiences to share, if that makes sense. Typically, we're able to go out, have new experiences, do things, and then come and communicate with each other. Now it's every day. The same stories are being told over and over. Hey, do you remember that? Do you remember this? And we've run out of stories. So that just leaves room for arguing and other things like that. So.
I love that. I think everybody can relate to that. We run out of stories. We don't have fresh experiences we're bringing back home to each other. We have to just create the fresh experiences in a very small space.
How many times can we debrief what we watched on Netflix last night? Yeah. So I get that. And were you, I think you might have been tuned in to hear the last segment on conflict. We talked about cooperation, ownership, respect, and empathy. Are those 4? Do you resonate with one of those more than the others?
Ooh, I know it's funny because I can identify where I lack the most, but I guess I'm pretty hard on myself to identify where my strong point is. But
don't be shy.
Okay, I think that I cooperate pretty well, but she's gonna be the one that has to, let us know if that's true or not.
Yeah, no, I would say that you cooperate very well. I would also say that you're really good at taking ownership, and I would say that I'm probably really good at being respectful. But sometimes taking my piece of the pie is not the most enjoyable.
That's great.
I love it.
That's great. Well, and do you remember, just before we get to your question, do you remember one of your fights in the midst of this as newlyweds with 3 years of marriage under your belt?
Oh, man. I guess, you know what? I guess we could kind of sum up most of our fights that we've had during this quarantine just in, I guess it kind of leads into our next question, or our first question, which is these uncommunicated expectations. There's got to be a way. I mean, what is the acronym that can help us communicate better? These subtle things that, like, I think that she knows, or I thought that I told her, or she thinks that I know, or she thought that she told me, like, it's just, and then it just springs from that, like.
And then there will be like a lot of pent up frustration because I'm like, it's so obvious to me that this thing needs to be done, or that this thing I want you to do or notice or talk about. And to me, it's so obvious, but to him, he's just like in la la land and doesn't understand at all and can't read my mind, obviously.
Right.
How is La La Land these days? It sounds like a pretty good place to be. So,
we've been growing up together, and I've had a lot more growing up to do than she has. So I've been blissfully ignorant while I've been frustrating her. But pray for me. We're growing and we're learning now.
So your question is really about communication, right? Which is the lifeblood of a marriage relationship. And let's be honest, married 3 years, you're still finding your dance steps together, right? It's just a natural kind of part of the early stages, right?
For sure. Yeah, and we step on each other's toes without even meaning to when it comes to that dance and married life. Yeah. It's not like we're intentionally trying to hurt. It's just that we fumble a bit.
Even when you've been married more than 30 years, you still step on each other's toes in communication. But, this is the number one single most often asked question of a marriage therapist. How can we communicate better.
Yeah.
And it happens because before we get married, all we did was communicate. We went on dates. Remember those, by the way? We'd go to dates and we'd just, talk into the wee hours.
We'd share all those fresh experiences.
Yes, exactly. and then you get married, and something kind of happens as you cross that proverbial threshold into marriage, where the conversations, it's like, I'm just exhausted. Can I just sit down and I need some time to unwind before we even talk, And it just kind of, for some reason, especially guys will tend to retreat a little bit more than women, but it's a big one, right?
Yeah, there's more at stake. Like you said, there are just expectations. And so the communication, rather than just flowing effortlessly, becomes a little bit tougher because there's so many hidden landmines there.
And I'll tell you, I'll confess our experience on communication. I'm a psychologist. Leslie's a marriage and family therapist. Yep. We've read all the research and all the books and studied with all the greats and all that kind of thing on communication. You'd think we'd have a lock on it. And I remember this is maybe, 10 years into our marriage or so. And we felt like, why do we keep having these communication meltdowns?
Yeah.
Right? We know what to do.
Yeah, we've got the skills in our repertoire. We just can't manage to always make them work.
It just still felt like the wheels were falling off some of our conversations and getting derailed. And by the way, let me do this while I'm thinking of it. I want to pass along 2 fundamentals for good communication, because this is what we were focused on, and then I'm going to show you what else we learned about it. But these 2 things, if you want to have better communication in the midst of what we're all going through with your spouse and with anybody else, really, it comes down to these 2 simple skills. Simple to say, not so easy to do. But the first one is to clarify content, right?
Yeah, it's just to make sure you're on the same page when it comes to what we're really talking about.
And you're probably going, well, no duh, right? Clarify content. I've heard that a million times. But it is so easy to jump to conclusions, to misread.
Oh, for sure.
And read between the lines when maybe that's not accurate. And,
yeah, like I'll say to you, what do you think? How do I look?
And I might say, you look fine with me.
And I'm like, he hates this, and I run to change. And, that wasn't what he thought, but it's what I received, and that I didn't clarify.
You get the idea. So we misinterpret. We need to clarify. Do you know that for the words that we use most frequently in the English language, there are on average 3.5 different meanings per word? That means there's lots of room for misinterpretation, right? So we need to clarify content. And that's as simple as saying, so what I hear you saying, and I know that we psychologists get a bad rap for this little phrase, what I hear you saying, but it really does work, at least a lot of the time. And so that's skill number 1, clarify content. Skill number 2, a little more challenging, but still fundamental, and that is to reflect feelings.
Right.
Reflect feelings.
Yeah, this is deeper because you're not just clarifying the content of what we're talking about. Now you're talking about sort of the emotional river that runs underneath what you're sharing with me, right, and that I get what this feels like to you.
Yeah, it's almost like you're panning for gold in this conversation, and you sift through all the verbiage to kind of lift out that little golden nugget of an emotion and go, hey, is this how you're feeling? Yeah, you're the first person all day that really gets it. It's such a gift when you can do that for your spouse, when you can reflect back their feeling. And again, it's not natural. We don't tend to do that. But it is an amazing, it's like giving them a little golden nugget, and it opens up their spirit. And by the way, this can be challenging for men in particular. Women have a larger feeling vocabulary than men do. We know that from research. They just literally use more words in their vocabulary to describe feelings than men do. It's like the Eskimos in snow, right? They just have more words for it. And so men, sometimes we get kind of deflated. You ask a guy, how are you feeling? I'm not hungry. I'm okay. It's something that we have to kind of work on a little harder. At the same time,
yeah, there's lots of encouragement because here's the deal. When it comes to reflecting feeling, you don't even have to get it right for it to actually be effective, which is great for men who might be insecure about
So I can say to Leslie, wow, it sounds like you're really feeling sad about this thing that we're talking about.
I'm not. I don't think I'm sad. I'm feeling angry right now.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Angry, right. So she's gonna open that door for me to walk into and kind of course correct, as long as she senses a genuine spirit.
And
from
that's
me.
the key, because it doesn't matter if you get the right feeling. What matters is you earnestly want to understand the feeling.
Right.
And so I'm not going to shut down. I'm going to just keep opening up to you.
Right.
And
that's the key. As long as you're genuine, I think it was George Burns or somebody way back in the day said that once you can fake genuineness, you got it made, right? You can't. It's not an acting job. Either you are genuine or you are not. So anyway, if you bring a genuine heart into the process and not just try to do a technique and reflect that feeling, that can go a long way. So does that make sense, you guys? Those are two practical things you can do. There's a part 2 to our answer, but I want to check in with you. Clarify content, reflect feeling. Does that seem doable?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, if you can kind of just, it's one of those muscle memory things. If you focus on it a little while, and here's what you'll be surprised at, your spouse will open up more than they ever have when you start to put this into practice. And it's a way to carve a groove into your communication, so you begin to do that naturally. But it's going to take intention for a while. Now here's kind of the strange thing, and maybe even frustrating thing, at least for us. Mm-hmm. We know we've known to do that for a long time, these two fundamental skills, and then we'd still have conversations that just didn't quite go right.
Yeah, that would just fly off the wheels.
And so we began to study this just as social scientists, and we had a research team at the university working with us, and we began to study and hypothesize what's really going on, even when we're doing the right things and the communication isn't going as well as it should. And long story short, I will tell you what we found. It comes down to emotional safety.
Yeah.
You will have the greatest conversations of your life when you are feeling emotionally secure.
Yeah.
All right? And that means that you are able to relax, like just, this is like the safest place on earth, being with you. When you feel that, that's when, and it comes back, you're both feeling that, that's when you have the greatest conversation. So we won't take time to just keep drilling down on that. We talk about it in our book, Love Talk. And I know there's a Chiron there at the bottom of the screen that shows you where you can get these resources. I'm not holding these books up as a commercial, by the way. I just know some folks out there want to drill down deeper. There's a great study on Right Now, a video study you can do with a group. In fact, we just tuned into a little video thing yesterday with a group that was going through Love Talk. So anyway, that's what it'll do is kind of help you discover. And it's Kaylin, it's not a what do you call it? Not a CORE. There's not four.
Oh, it's not an acronym.
It's not an acronym, right? But there is a way to identify your emotional safety need so that you can move into that, lean into that, and your spouse can help you get there, and vice versa. And it's kind of like, what if I told you guys I could introduce you to a builder that would put an addition onto your home, just a room, like your condo, wherever you live, your apartment, and it would be big enough for a couple of chairs and maybe a table. And it'd be nothing particularly special, except whenever the two of you were in that room, you would have the greatest conversations of your life. Can you imagine? You'd come home from work, if you ever left the house, you'd come home from work and you'd go, meet me in the room. I got to talk to you, right? You would have all of your meals in that room. Who doesn't want a space like that? Well, when you can decipher and kind of crack the code of your emotional safety need, and my emotional safety, what's your emotional safety need?
Yeah, I'm all about approval. It's knowing I have the blessing and love of the person I'm talking to.
Right, and mine is?
Yours is all about time. You're urgent.
I love efficiency. Don't waste my time.
Get her done.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when we can both plug into each other's emotional safety need, that really goes a long way in creating that space, that room. So I hope that's helpful, you guys. What a great question. Two great questions: conflict and communication. And I know we're going to take a break here, but I hope that's helpful. And when we come back, we're going to talk to some more couples with some more practical questions with hopefully practical answers too. See you in just a moment.
Les and Leslie are the marriage experts. I don't know anyone in our country who has more wisdom or has done more research specifically on marriages. And we're going to hear from the parents again in just a little bit. But first, it's time for a break. We're going to take 20 minutes to stand up, stretch our legs, and just debrief. So there's going to be a countdown on the screen to help guide you back. And you don't want to be late because you don't want to miss the next session.
We need to talk. You've done something wrong.
Okay.
I'm toast.
Now, I'm not upset.
I'm upset.
I'm just kind of surprised.
I'm a ticking time bomb of volcanic fury.
Because you forgot about yesterday?
Because you are a moron of epic proportions.
Yesterday.
I'm toast.
Yesterday was the 15th anniversary of our first official date.
Oh, that's right, I remember.
I have no memory of that.
Do I need to get some flowers or something?
No.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
No.
Are you mad?
No.
Yes.
You'll remember next year.
I will.
I won't.
So how do you like the casserole?
It's a new flavor.
Tastes like the devil ate a skunk sandwich and vomited into my mouth.
That's my mom's favorite recipe. I grew up on that. Might as well slap my mother in the face.
Well, you know I would never do that. You know I think your mother's wonderful.
Actually, I think your mother's a...
So,
Want to have sex?
how was your day?
Want to have sex?
Exhausting.
Don't even think about it, you sex maniac.
Exhausting, huh?
Want to have sex?
Exhausting.
I'd rather rub broken glass in my eyes.
Do you want to cuddle?
Want to cuddle for 2 seconds, then have sex?
My head hurts.
You lay one finger on me and I'll beat you with this lamp, you filthy McNasty.
Okay. Good night.
How about now? You want to have sex now?
Sweetie, honey,
Yes?
is it me or is it hot in here? Believe me, it's just you. Don't get any ideas.
Come on, please.
No.
Please.
Go to bed.
Pretty please.
Every night you ask, and what do I say? No. You think you would get the hint.
You don't have to be so mean about it.
Look, for you it's as easy as flipping on a switch, but for me it's a lot more.
Baby, I know. But it just feels good.
Maybe to you.
Look, if you do it tonight, I won't ask anymore.
I've heard that one before.
Come on, please.
Even though you know I don't want to.
Yeah.
It's always what you want, isn't it?
Actually, no. If it was, we would do it every night, and I wouldn't always have to ask.
Fine, but you owe me.
Thank you. Told you it'd feel good.
Adam, does this goat skin make me look big?
Looks better on you than the previous owner. What?
I'm having a hard time losing these last few pounds since bearing your children, and that's the best you can do? I look better than a goat? Thanks.
Babe, you know you are the most beautiful woman on the planet. What?
I'm the only woman on the planet.
Well, I can't help that.
You know, and it's amazing that as the only woman on the planet, you still can't seem to remember my birthday or give me flowers once in a while.
Well, I did give you a rib.
Oh, right. I forgot about that, since you haven't mentioned it for an hour. It's like your free pass to never lift a finger for me again.
Never lift a finger? I am out there busting my rear all day. Food just doesn't pop up from the ground. I have to get it with the sweat of my brow, since someone went and got the ground cursed.
You think farming's hard? Try raising those kids. Try giving birth.
Well, if someone wouldn't have taken advice from a talking reptile.
Oh, here we go.
Are you talking to me, you little snake? What? Oh, jump off a bridge? Oh, I would, but they haven't been invented yet. Oh, eat this fruit? Well, you look like a pretty trustworthy snake.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, well, we were until you went and pretty much ruined it for all of mankind, so good job with that.
I seem to remember you taking a bite, too.
Well, I thought I was eating from the tree of the knowledge of restfulness and serenity.
Right. It's never your fault.
Besides, what was I gonna do with a fallen wife? That would just be weird.
Oh, you fell for me? You're an idiot.
Idiot? I named every single animal.
Right. Great job with that. A prairie dog's not a dog. A seahorse isn't a horse, and a bald eagle isn't bald.
Well, I was going pretty fast.
Aardvark? Platypus?
Okay, they were at the back of the line. Not everything can be cat or rat or bat.
Hippopotamus?
Yeah, well, woman was taken. Okay, how many gourds do you have back there? That was a joke. Not good for men to be alone.
No, it's great.
We're Chet and Susanna Baines. As marriage experts, we specialize in home modifications, which will help you improve the feng shui of your marriage.
Because home is where the heart is, we update, construct, and remodel your nightmare and flip it into the marriage of your dreams. We are
the Marriage Fixer-Uppers.
So guys, tell me exactly what's been going on.
I feel like he shuts down and never wants to talk about how he's feeling.
Oh yeah. We're gonna tear down that wall. Really open it up in here.
Perfect. That's what I want.
She doesn't understand the pressures I have at work. It's a lot to bear. I have to do it on my own.
You definitely have a load-bearing issue, that's for sure. But don't worry.
Huh. Where's that stud?
Exactly. Where's the stud I married? The one that pursued me?
Here we go again, talking about how I've let myself go.
You know how many wads I do?
Oh, looks like we're gonna have to get started right away.
Hey!
Huh, looks like you got shiplap under here. Knowing your marriage is kind of like this new light fixture I just installed. Hell, it's actually like this light bulb. You get what I'm saying?
Are you saying I need a new light bulb?
What? No. Your marriage. just needs a little spark.
Are you even an electrician?
No, it's just anecdotal marriage analogies. That's what counts.
What in the world is that?
Those are the new his and her toilets. You see, marriage is about opening up and sharing everything together. We like to call it sharing our marriage bowels. A couple that goes together grows together. So guys, we don't have a lot of money left in the budget.
It's starting to sound a little bit like our marriage. Am I right? No.
But with the leftover money, you have one of three options to choose. Number one, we have a beautiful walk-in closet for the master bedroom. Here we have a man cave with theater seating.
That one sounds good to me.
Just like you to think about yourself.
Oh, come on, guys. This is about talking, listening, making a decision together.
And number three, a brand new in-ground swimming pool.
Yeah.
That sounds like a nice compromise.
Why is Chet shirtless?
I have a pool company too. Just got my chest waxed.
Walk-in closet sounds great.
Are you guys ready to see the latest addition to your lovely home?
Yeah.
They are sure to bring this marriage back to good.
Ta-da! What is this?
It's a dog. Hey. See, nothing brings a couple closer together than having a common purpose, like being able to take care of a dog. Gets you more responsibility when it comes to taking care of the kids.
The kids?
No!
Whose kids are these?
You can't be serious.
Oh, hey, don't worry. We're turning John's office into a guest suite, so when the in-laws come to move in, everything will be taken care of.
You got rid of my office?
Oh, come on, like you ever did any work in there.
Not now, Brooke.
Mommy and Daddy are fighting again.
Oh, no!
I told you guys you weren't ready for kids.
These aren't our kids.
Well, it looks like our work is done here. Good job, honey.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential there.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back. We've had a great first half of Marriage Night, and I'm excited for you to experience this next part. Michael Jr. is known for his stand-up comedy, and you're gonna get a great dose of that. But what I also love about him is that he sees comedy as a vehicle to teach truth. And as you're about to hear, he has a unique perspective on how comedy relates to married life.
Michael Jr. is a comedian who's performed in some of the most prestigious comedy clubs across the nation. He's brought laughter to The Tonight Show on NBC, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and Comedy Central. He's been a keynote speaker for TED Talks and stars in the movie Selfie Dad that is now available on demand. Michael Jr.
Yo, I am Michael Jr. I am so pumped and excited you decided to be here. We're about to have a blast. I'm telling you, we're gonna have so much fun. So listen, I know it's weird that I'm in an abandoned building. There's a virus out right now. I don't know if you know about the virus, but it's out there. And I know I don't have a face mask on right now. I normally always have it on, especially in public, except for when I need to sneeze. Because then I'm not gonna keep that to myself. Just give it to the world. Anyways, we're gonna have a great time today, and we're doing this to pour into your marriage. So sit back and enjoy this. And on top of this, to kick it off, let's start with a laugh.
I love being a dad. Like, that stuff is the best. It's one of the best responsibilities. I got 5 kids. Yeah, man. And I travel a lot, so I can see them all. I'm just playing. I don't see them. No, I do have 5 kids, and whenever you have a big family, you have to figure out ways to save money, right? We want to get our family pictures taken. That stuff was expensive. So we did to save money, right? So we all got in the front seat of the car, look both ways and rent a red light. That's what we did. Yeah. 2 weeks later, the picture came in the mail. But my son blinked, so we had to do it again. So I was doing that joke in prison recently, right? I wasn't in prison like, hey, I'm funny, get off me. It wasn't like that. Whenever we're doing a big comedy event, sometimes we'll stop at a homeless shelter, a prison, abused children's facility. We'll stop there and we'll do some comedy for the people, right? So I'm at this prison and I'm doing, why do comedy at a prison? Some of y'all looking at me. It's a captive audience. We'll throw it out there. So we're at this prison and I do the joke about the red light and 75% of the prisoners laugh, the rest of them, nothing. Then I realized what was going on. Some of them had been locked up for so long, the dude next to him had to explain the joke. He was like, see, nowadays when you run a red light, they send a picture with a ticket in the mail. Then he looked at the dude next to him and was like, a red light is what they use for traffic when you go down the road. And then he said, a road is what they use. Where am I right now? I don't work that hard to find comedy. It just kind of shows up. I took my daughter to get a toddler bed, and it came with a 20-year warranty. I'm just gonna wait some years. I'm gonna take it back. They're gonna be like, what's wrong? I'm gonna be like, her feet are hanging off the end. And her husband's uncomfortable too. Need my money back.
Oh, so that's what I get to do. It is so cool. And one of the things I've noticed in doing comedy over these years is there's some significant parallels between comedy and life. And the way I got to this place is I had a shift that took place. As a comedian, whenever I got on stage, I was asking a question. And the question I was asking was, how could I get laughs from people? Everyone has a question that they're asking inside their head, whether they can articulate it or not. But as a performer, I was asking the question, how can I get laughs? Then one night outside of a club in Los Angeles, right before I got on stage, I had a change in mindset. And I did a little prayer, and I felt like instead of trying to get laughs from people, I felt like God said to me, I want you to go up there and give them an opportunity to laugh. This changed everything. Because now I'm not looking to take, I'm simply looking for an opportunity to give. So I got on stage that night. We had a great time. We laughed. It was fun. I leave the club that night, and there's people outside. They want autographs or taking pictures, just like any other time at this club. But this time, while I'm talking to the people, I look across the street, and I saw a homeless guy. I had never seen a homeless guy outside this club before, ever. But that doesn't mean he wasn't there before. That just means before, my mindset was, how could I get laughs from people, so why would I even notice a homeless guy? So I changed that mindset, and then suddenly, boom, I see this opportunity. And I start asking the question, how could I give him an opportunity to laugh? The parallels are amazing between comedy and life.
So before I go any further, I want to explain to you guys how comedy works. This is how comedy works. First, there's a setup, and then there's a punchline. Let me explain. The setup is when a comedian will use his talents and resources to seize any opportunity to ensure that you, the audience, are moving in the same direction. The punchline occurs when he changes that direction in a way you're not expecting. When you catch on to this change, you've received the punchline, and the results are revelation, fulfillment, and joy expressed through laughter. Let me give you an example. I took my family to Mexico for a week on vacation. The first 2 days were rough because the people there kept calling me a Negro. The third day, I realized they were saying amigo, and it was hard. Did you see what happened there?
Yo, so listen, I hope you enjoyed that clip, so check it. One of the things I really think is significantly important with regards to the combination of comedy and life is that you understand how I develop comedy. Well, let me start it like this. There's 3 ways that I create comedy. If you've ever seen any of my comedy, either YouTube or The Tonight Show or anything that I've done, one of these 3 ways are the way that I created comedy. Every single time, it's one of these methods. The first method I'll tell you about is improv. Improv is when I'm just making something up off the spot, just on the dome. Something may have just taken place in the crowd, and we're just creating. I have a podcast called Michael Jr. Off the Cuff, which is all of those improv moments from comedy shows all over the place. So improv is a lot of fun. The thing about improv, it doesn't really transfer that well. Meaning it's cool in the moment, but I can't go to the next show and tell somebody about what happened at the show before. It just doesn't transfer that well. The other way I create comedy is what is referred to as a premise. A premise is when I have an idea for what I think might be funny, but I'm not 100% sure yet. So I have to put it on stage and kind of work it out a little bit to find out if it's funny. An example of a premise is, I just think it's funny, and I haven't been on stage yet with this, but I have a feeling it'll be funny. I just got to work it out. I think one thing that's hysterical to me is naked baby statues. Yeah. You see them all the time. They're always in somebody's backyard, or they're holding up a lamp or something in their house. It's just a little statue of a naked baby. I don't know what happens in life where somebody feel like, okay, I got to this level. Now I just need to get a naked baby statue. Like, I don't understand what that is and what happens. So that's a premise. I still gotta work it out. I gotta put it in front of an audience. It may hit hard, it may not. I gotta develop it. The other way I create comedy is when I start with the punchline. When I start with the punchline, those are always the most impactful jokes every single time. Because I knew where I wanted to get to, and then I start from there. How does these things apply to life? Well, I think it's 3 ways people try to understand what their purpose is, whether individually or in their marriage. And I think it's significantly important that you understand the purpose of your marriage. There's a purpose. God didn't just put y'all together for, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, that's not it. Like, there's something way bigger than just that. And the way people find out what that is really 3 ways. Some people are improving their way through life. They're not really sure what it is they want to do or what they're called to do. So they keep trying this out, they try this out, and they may get a snap of fulfillment when they do improv, but they're not really sure. You could figure out what your full punchline is in life, what your purpose is in life, just by improvising through, but you could also be wasting a lot of time. Some people have a premise. They actually have a premise on what it is they think they're supposed to do. And what they do is they'll actually go to college based off that premise. They'll get a degree in English, and they have that premise and the plaque is on the wall, but they don't do that at all because it was just a premise. And remember, a premise might work, but you gotta work it out, and chances are it may fall flat. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen with them naked baby statues. Sorry if you're just tuning in right now. You have no idea how this is connected. Maybe you should have got here earlier. The best way to understand what your purpose is and how to walk in it is to start with the punchline in mind. Start kind of like God does with the end in mind. He knows the end from the beginning and the beginning from the end. He fully gets that. So if you can start with the punchline and know what that thing is, and the way you do that is you get on your face, you ask for God's grace, and you just dig in. When you understand what the punchline is, now you get to write the story to get to that place. Now you get to go to school to get to that place. Now your marriage is to get to that place. Figure out what the punchline is, and then that is when you're going to have the biggest impact on your audience, like on the real. So I know we went a little deep, right? But that's cool, because one thing I really like is, I like this right here. Watch this. That was awkward, wasn't it? Listen, I just like awkwardness. It's like one of my favorite things. Well, check it. Like, I'll look for awkwardness. Like, I'll get on an elevator when there's like 6 or 7 people in there. I'll let the door close behind me, and I won't turn around. And then I'll say something random like, my shoes are on upside down. And then everyone gets off on the next floor. And then I just giggle my way to the top. It's so much fun. Another thing I do, right? You gotta try this. This is so much fun. Like, I'll use a phrase the right way that most people use the wrong way. It creates awkwardness, and it's so much fun. Let me explain. So I walk up to somebody I don't know. I never met him before, in public from a little distance. I walk up to him and I'll say, hey there, stranger. Haven't seen you in forever.
Then I just walk off. I'm telling you, you gotta try it. It'll be awkward at first. When you go home, you'll be crying. Like, it is the best. It's the best. Yo, something else I did, like, so I grew up in Michigan, right? And it's cold in Michigan, right? Now I live in Dallas, right? And recently I found one of my old ski masks, right? And I like awkwardness and stuff, man. So I just started walking around Dallas with a ski mask on, man. I'm not gonna rob anybody, that's just wrong. I just got a ski mask on, right? Went to the bank, too. Again, I'm not gonna rob anybody. I'm in line like everybody else. Hey, little girl, how you doing? Cool. Reason I went to the bank is because, like, what they gonna do? Have you seen the security guards at the bank? It's like one extreme or another. Some young dude, pimples on his face, he really an insecurity guard. Or it's like a super old dude with like 6 hearing aids, a social security guard. And they never got a gun. They got a walkie-talkie. You're not a security guard. You a tattletale. That's what you are. You're a grown man tattletale. That's what you are. Yo, what about this one, right? You ever be on a job interview and partway through you realize, I don't want to work here. Yo, at that point, don't bail on the interview. You should have fun. Flip the whole interview. They say something like, so tell me a little bit about yourself. You're like, you know what? You go first. Let me ask you a question. Where do you see me in 5 years? Because they always ask those weird questions. They ask questions like, they'll say, so tell me about a time you had a disagreement with a coworker, and then tell me how you worked it out. Like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So I had a colleague who actually took credit for some work I did. Like, they didn't do anything on the project. I fully did it, and they took all the credit. So what I did, right, I walked over to their cubicle, right? And then fast forward, here I am, you know? Yeah. So, another way that I'm giving y'all some stuff. Like, I don't normally dive this deep, but I just feel like I probably should. Normally, you don't get this much. Normally, I set it up so then you got to show up and you got to do my course. We got a course called Funny How Life Works. It is hilarious, it's funny, but it also teaches you how life works. But right now, I'm gonna give you a little something extra. So when I'm on stage creating comedy, there's something that's taking place and nobody knows it. Nobody's aware of it, but what's really going on is I may be doing joke number 1. But at the same time, I'm doing the math on what I think joke number 2 should be based off how you're currently responding to joke number 1. Once I have joke number 2 locked, I'll move on to joke number 3 and start doing the math on what I think joke number 3 should be based off how you're currently responding to joke number 1 and probably responding to joke number 2. Then I move on to joke number 4. I know, I used to actually go 7 jokes deep, but I can't anymore because I met Jesus and he wanted to talk. So I could really actually only go, I like 3 jokes in, maybe 4 jokes ahead of where I'm actually at. And the reason is because I'm asking a different question now. As I mentioned before, the question I used to ask is, how could I get laughs from people? But then I started asking, how could I give people an opportunity to laugh? I simply started asking, I've shortened it up even since then, and I started asking the question, what can I give to my audience? That changed everything because now it's not just a joke and the next joke and the next joke. The audience may have a completely different need. I just need to ask the question, what can I give? And when you ask the question, you're going to find answers. For example, have you ever seen an orange elephant? You probably just did because your brain gave you the answer to what that would look like. Because you'd never thought of an orange elephant before, but because I mentioned it, boom, this orange elephant suddenly shows up, purple giraffe. Yeah, see what just happened again? That's exactly how this works. So now that I'm asking a different question, I'm literally asking what can I give to my audience? I'm getting different answers. So I have to be more sensitive. And God is speaking to me even from the stage. So what I'm really doing is I'm listening in between the gaps. I'm literally listening to between the gaps and I'm asking, what can I give? My question to you is, what question are you asking? Because I guarantee no matter what you do in life, there's gaps. No matter what's going on in your marriage, whatever your wife is saying, whatever your husband is saying, there's gaps. Are you listening in between the gaps? And if you're listening, what question are you asking?
Are you asking what can I get, or are you asking what can I give? If you don't know the answer to that question, I think you know the answer to that question. Really gotta be sensitive to what question you're asking in between the gaps. Are you aware of the question you're asking? If you're not, by default, again, the question that you're asking is what can I get? But if you change the question, you're gonna change what sort of answers you get, and those opportunities will be amazing. Here's an example. I was in Nashville, right? The event is sold out. I don't know, there's like 3 layers of people. We're having a great show. I'm probably like 50 minutes into the show, having a great time. We're laughing, having a great time. And I felt like, I'm listening between the gaps, and I felt like God said to me, hey, bring that lady up on stage. I work alone, Lord. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's really just me and a stool, really. Yeah. So, and I know which lady you're talking about, obviously, because we're having this conversation, but there's a lady off to my right, and she's sitting there, and she don't look funny at all. Like, she just don't look funny. And I'm like, I'm gonna bring her up on stage for what? So then I do another joke, and I feel it again. Bring her up on stage. So I look at her again, while everybody else is laughing. I look at her, and she's not even looking at me. She's looking at the sign language lady. Yeah, which means she's deaf. Like, she can't even hear what I'm saying. I don't know any sign language. Only sign language I know is this right here and another one before I was a Christian. I'm not gonna show you right now. They would probably blur it out anyway. I'm not gonna show you. So I'm looking at her, I'm like, I gotta bring this lady up on stage. So I went on there, I said, okay. I said to the sign language lady, I said, hey, can you ask her to come up on stage, please? So she walks up on stage. She's moving really slow. It's a white lady. She's maybe like 54 years old. You can tell she's scared. So I got to be really, really careful with her, right? She comes up on stage, and I say to the sign language lady, I said, hey, can you ask her, what is her biggest need? So she signs over, she signs back, and she says, she doesn't have any needs. She's fine. It's like, ask her again. So she signs over and signs back, and she explains it. Her and her husband haven't been on vacation in over 11 years, not even for a weekend. And they could really use some time away. Okay. So what normally happens under this circumstance, right? What normally happens is we pass a hat around, we collect a bunch of money, and then we give it to them. The greatest punchlines are the ones you never see happening. And money is not a punchline. It's the result of you using your setup. So all I did was ask the next question. And maybe that's what you should do with your spouse. Just ask the next question. Just stay curious. So I said, well, why not? She signs over, she signs back, and she explains. She said, well, they have a special needs child, and they can't afford a nurse who's qualified in a way that they can take care of the child, they feel comfortable, and they can leave. I was like, okay. So I turned to my audience. I don't know who's in this audience exactly. And I said to the audience, I said, where is the special needs nurse who can deliver their punchline? And the whole room is silent. They're still kind of tripping. We were just laughing 2 minutes earlier really hard. So I had to say it again. I said, where is the special needs nurse who can deliver their punchline? And you hear a voice come from the top balcony. This lady says, here I am. And she comes walking down. And we introduce them, and they live 30 minutes from each other. And the whole room is done. Like, we're done. But what really happened? Somebody showed up with their setup, willing to deliver their punchline, and someone else was there and they were willing to receive it. That's what really took place. Your spouse has something amazing to deliver, and you need to be able to receive it. It's so important that you ask the question, what can I give so you can deliver to your spouse so you guys can truly deliver together? Because you have something amazing that you're going to accomplish. You have something amazing that you're going to deliver to this world. But you gotta ask a different question. Instead of asking, what can I get? Literally ask, what can I give? You can ask the other person, yes, but more importantly, ask him, because it's not always about them. Do what he's telling you to do, and you will deliver every single time. I appreciate you. I love you. I'm Michael Jr. I'm out.
Hey guys, we're back, and Michael Jr., incredible. We've had the opportunity to travel around the country a little bit with him, and you see things through a whole new lens when you're traveling with Michael. Let me just tell you that. One of our favorite people. So how fun. And I loved the couples we got to meet in our first segment.
So much fun and so genuine. And I think everyone relates to them. We related to them, and I know you did too.
We all have conflict, and we all need help with communication. We got a couple questions during the break about the resource on communication. And just a reminder, that's the book, Love Talk. Others said, hey, what's this thing I also see on your website or online called Love Talk Starters? And so if you're not a reader, you're going to love this book, because here's what the inside of it looks like.
Giant fonts. Yeah.
It's just questions to kind of get you going. That's why it's called Love Talk Starters. So it's kind of fun to do. I know a lot of couples just kind of leave it on their kitchen table or maybe on their bedstand or something like that.
Especially these days when we need fresh experiences for conversations to get us started.
Some of them are just silly and for fun. Who would play you in a movie if there was a movie about your marriage, stuff like that. And then more meaningful stuff as well. So there you go. So this next segment, we've got some more couples that we're going to connect with. And our first couple up is it Micah?
Micah and Maggie.
Micah and Maggie. That's close to Les and Leslie with the alliteration there. But how are you guys doing?
We're doing all right. How are y'all doing?
Good. Now, where are you located?
We're located in Immokalee, Florida.
Florida. Wow. Okay. So in 2020, you've had the whole COVID crisis and all the rest that we all are aware of. But then on top of that, you've had some amazing weather to contend with, right?
Oh yeah, it's always sunny in South Florida. I tell you what.
So and how long have you guys been married?
So we've been married, coming up this year will be 5 years in December.
Wow. Okay.
Congrats. Yeah.
And do I understand, Maggie, you guys have a newborn?
Well, he'll be a year old next month, so it still feels like sometimes he's a newborn.
Yeah, definitely a babe and a toddler in the works, right? These are intense days. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. What a year of adjustment for you guys with a new little one throughout this whole time. You'll always be able to mark the season from the birth of that child, right? In the midst of all of it. And what do you guys do for a living?
So I'm a worship pastor here at our church. It's a church called Fellowship Church.
And I clean our church.
You make sure it's all in order, and he takes care of the worship. Is that why is that a tambourine I see behind your head back there?
That probably is. Yeah, you probably see a tambourine and some random other trinkets up there.
That's actually a church member that is from Puerto Rico. She visited her family and she brought back a tambourine for us. So
we accrue instruments from church members.
Well,
making a joyful noise.
I could probably, I can't play the guitar. I bet I could pick up the tambourine though. That's something that probably I could do.
I'm not sure.
No, but actually I couldn't. Yeah, I don't have the rhythm for it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about opening up a rental shop for harmonicas during this time of COVID. I thought this would be the season to do that. So
I'll give you some startup money. You got it.
Careful, Michael Jr.'s coming for you.
Yeah, I'll let him take care of the jokes. Is she going to get a harmonica and play for us? What's going on?
We're going to go through a whole bag of treats here.
Yeah, because we were talking about the baby. We got the baby right back behind us right now. So.
Oh, you do?
That's so perfect.
You guys take care of that baby. Do whatever you need to do. So what's been first of all, going back to our last segment, have you had conflict together as your newlyweds with newborns? Surely you've had some conflicts. What are they on?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I mean, once the baby came, it's like, okay, well, who does what? I mean, you have that question when you get married. Okay, who takes responsibility for such and such things? And then you add a kid on top of that, and then you really say, okay, so who's going to keep all those things going while someone's taking care of the baby? But we found a groove, and it's just it takes time. And
are you finding that you've kind of divvied up the chores and the tasks and all that? Or are you still finding your way?
Yeah, I mean, what do you?
I think by a year, I think we were. I'm a very much so like type A, like very planned person. So I think that was helpful in this process, just because, like, not that I was trying to take charge, but I was able to delegate responsibility. So
I love it. That energy can cut the chaos in half, right? That's good.
Yeah. And then how about communication? Are you finding that to fall into place pretty well? Or is that a challenge like it is for most of us as we're kind of stepping on each other's toes in the midst of quarantine and all the rest?
Sure. I mean, I think there's definitely moments. We all have those moments where we're sitting on the couch or whatever, and somebody says something, it can kind of get to you or whatever. But I think for sure there's been times here and there where we've had our moments. But
I think the toughest
You're not
probably
alone.
the middle of the night when the baby's awake and won't go back to sleep. It's those moments where the communication really gets tested because we both want to go back to sleep but our kid doesn't want to. So
2 of the 3 of you went to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, you guys, what an incredible season for you. Well, tell us what's on your mind. What's the question that's percolating to the top for the 2 of you?
Yeah. So for us is what do you have any creative ideas for a date night? I mean, we got the baby here in the back, and it's been a crazy season and everything, but what ideas would you have maybe you can percolate in your brain a little bit there?
Well, that's all the time we have. So thanks for. That's a great question. It really is, and man, it's been one of the toughest kind of things to mourn. I think in the midst of this, and at least at times, there's things that are more serious. But man, just the stuff we used to take for granted. We have this restaurant here in Seattle that is called Chinook's that is kind of like one of our big date places that it's just a go-to. And then we have another kind of Chinese food, Din Tai Fung. Yeah, haven't been there in so long, I couldn't even remember the name of it. But, what do you do, right? Because you kind of find your grooves on that stuff. I get it. What was like a fun date night for you before all this happened?
Oh, what was a fun date night?
Well, pre-baby or post-baby?
Pre-baby.
Well, we live on the water. No, we don't. Our house is not on the water, but the beach is very close because we live, in pretty much the bottom of Florida, and we like to go boating and fishing, and so we would definitely use fishing opportunities as a day date for us. And then there's a restaurant we love, Bonefish Grill. That seems to be and there's like a specific one in town. Not just any of them. Like we like because it's on the water and there are boats.
Right.
So boats keep,
Yeah, it seems to come back.
It's the thing.
Right. I get that.
You guys sound like a fun couple, boating and fishing.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Yeah.
Florida.
You guys, thank you so much for asking this question because, man, date night matters so much. And here's the thing we know. There is so much power in shared activity as a couple. I wish I'd understood this so much, earlier in our relationship.
Let me just say, this is something for women. Tune into this right now because you're going to get a new insight on your man. It's almost universal, right?
Yeah, because what I'm always hungry for are just the deep and great conversations. What I had no understanding of is that the deep and great conversations that I could have easily with a girlfriend are probably not going to happen with my husband because guys they don't consider a conversation an activity. They want to go do something together. That's what opens their spirit and makes a great conversation even possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, the research shows this. It's when you see guys don't call up other guys and go, hey, you want to get together and talk? We want to go do something. You want to go fish. You want to go play tennis. You want to go to a movie. You want to go to a game, whatever it is. And it's in the context of the activity that our spirits will tend to open up. Whereas for women, and again, we're painting broad brush strokes here on gender differences, but for women, generally speaking, it's like, we want to go out to dinner, go have coffee. And I'm just hoping that he'll talk about his hopes and his dreams and his fears. And he doesn't say anything. What's going on with this guy, And it's because a guy's spirit doesn't open up that way. And so oftentimes it's just a little activity, even a walk around the block.
Even during this kind of crazy COVID season, for us, literally, I'm not making this up, a shared activity might be, we're going to tackle the mudroom and clean that thing down.
That's true.
And because that's a satisfying project for you, I get in there, I don't care at all about cleaning the mudroom. It could stay cluttered for the rest of my life.
Stay muddy forever.
But I know if I'm standing there and we're working together, you're going to start talking to me and I'm going to love the conversation we share.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be glamorous necessarily to be a date, because a date is whatever connects our spirits.
Yeah, and I just got to say, this is a research finding that once we discovered it, it really revolutionized our date nights together.
Totally.
Because you leaned into the activity more than just trying to go,
Right.
let's just talk. Let's just sit on this bench and talk, which is fine. We can do that too. But if you're kind of frustrated sometimes that your spirits aren't opening up, try that shared activity. So let me give you an idea of something we've been suggesting to couples ever since this started. And it was really suggested to us, surprisingly, by other couples that said, hey, do you guys know you did something that has made date night really fun for us? And we're like, no, what is that? And so it has to do with a little tool that we developed some years ago called Better Love.
Yeah, and when you say a tool, it's actually a really fun thing.
Yeah.
This is not, some kind of a heavy duty.
You go online, and I'll tell you how this relates to date night in just a moment. Stick with me. But you go online and you answer a series of questions. It takes about 10 minutes to answer these questions. You each do it separately. And once you've both finished that, instantly, within a matter of seconds, you get this report. And with it comes an action plan that is built around 4 date nights that you can have at home. You don't even have to go to a restaurant if you're not doing that or whatever, but you can. And it has some great conversation starters and how to kind of debrief the report together, and even some fun crafty things to do together if you want to as well. So
it's fun to do something novel on date night, and we don't have that many options, but I just want to underscore why something like this can be so powerful.
Yeah.
Because we know that when you do something novel together, something that's just not in your rut and routine, that's what sparks that sort of fun biochemistry that makes you feel more of that in loveness together.
Yeah,
and
it's
gives
literally
you that
the same, what we call a neuro shower.
Right.
You get those neurochemicals in your system that you had when you were first falling in love, when you had that novel experience. And of course, during quarantine and with restaurants closed for the most part and all that we're all coping with.
Novelty's at a loss right now.
It's difficult to do. That's why this Better Love, that's why we're getting so many positive, comments from couples that have discovered, hey, this is a really fun kind of do-it-yourself date night. So hope that makes sense. By the way, speaking of novel date nights, Leslie and I haven't thought about this for a while. This was about maybe 5 years ago. And I had a Groupon come in on my email, and it was for trapeze lessons in downtown Seattle, where we live. And I thought, oh, that'd be an incredible date night, trapeze lessons. So I just instinctively just bought it. And then I surprised Leslie and said, hey, we're going on trapeze lessons. She said, no, we're not. And I said, yeah, we are. We already bought them. We got to use them now. And so we did that, and it was a crazy
crazy fun experience, and we will not do the flying trapeze again. That was more novel than I can take. But maybe you boaters and fishers are good at that.
But it was just as an illustration. I mean, what do you think the conversation was like after trapeze lessons versus going out for dinner and a movie? It was just, we were so amped up with energy. I can't believe it. It felt like that guy was pushing me off the thing. It was just all this energy to talk about it. And that's what you want on a date night, that kind of fun. So anyway, I can't promise you that the Better Love assessment is going to be as energizing and thrilling as learning how to trapeze.
But it creates an emotionally, a novelty that's emotional. And that really is bonding.
Yeah, it really is. So, hey, guys, we wish you the very best in Florida and that little precious one that you have. You got to hold that baby up. I saw you holding him earlier. I don't know if we had him on camera, but we've got to all see this little precious one that you have. And what's the baby's name?
So his name's Ruger.
Oh,
he's a redhead too.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my soul! Could that be a cuter head of hair? You guys have your hands full in the best way ever.
Yeah, and that is a sweetie right there. But you guys, thanks a million for joining us. All right, take care. All right, so hopefully that helps you. If you want to check out the Better Love Assessment, you can obviously do that and learn more. But let's hear from another couple here. I think we have Dennis and Susan, our last couple, as we close out this segment. And Dennis and Susan, how are you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Doing well.
Doing really
Yeah.
good. Really good.
Good. And where are you coming from? Where do you guys live?
We're in McKinney, Texas.
McKinney, which is a suburb of Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas, absolutely. Home of some of the best Tex-Mex that you'll ever find.
Absolutely.
If you come to Texas, you got to have our Tex-Mex.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that.
For sure. And in fact, I think Leslie and I have a live, we've had so many live events that got postponed, and we get to Dallas a lot. And I think the first one that we'll have once kind of everything clears is going to be there. And I'm going to get some Tex-Mex for sure. I'm looking forward to it. We don't have that here in Seattle. We have salmon and, seafood. We just don't know how to do Mexican food very well.
That's true. That's true.
Hey, so tell us about yourselves. How long have you guys been married and what do you guys do?
Yeah, we've been married 37 years.
Nice.
So a long time. And I'm on staff at a church as well. I'm executive pastor at Christ Fellowship Church here in McKinney, Texas.
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm a video production manager. I've actually spent most of my life being on staff at churches and various production roles. But I'm actually now on staff at Globe Life Insurance as their video production manager.
Okay.
So telling story in a different way.
So how has, it's like a knee-jerk thing you just say, so how has 2020 been treating you? We all know the answer. It's been difficult. But what's been some of the challenges that you guys have faced? Are you working from home? I'm guessing with your church there in McKinney, you've been trying to figure out when do we get back together in person and how do we make it safe? But that's got to be especially as the executive pastor, that has to be a huge challenge, right?
It has been. It's been a very stressful time. I'll just be honest with you, trying to determine. We actually went back in June. We're open for 2 weeks and then had a spike here in Texas and had to close back down. And now we're reopening again this weekend. So
Wow.
it has been it's been taxing for our church staff. I've got a church of about 54 on staff, so it's a pretty good group to try to manage. And team did great getting online, but just a lot of moving parts to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Susan as well with her role.
we both went to shelter in place right around the same time. And both of us are very busy. Both of us are on Zoom calls all day long, things like that. And so I think the normal for us initially was just figuring out where we were going to be so that I wasn't infringing on his calls and vice versa. How we were going to balance our day. And we've got 2 dogs. Our kids we're empty nesters. So they're the children, the fur babies, and dealing with all of that at the same time. But we finally found a normal.
Yeah, got a groove going.
For all of that. So it ended up working out well.
Yeah.
Well, we can all identify, and I think at least a couple times a week I talk with a pastor that we're in some kind of relationship with on assessments or something, and I hear the stories of just that struggle of, man, we tried to get started and had a false start, and now we're just still trying to figure it out, and how do we be safe? But man, we all long to get back in our churches and worship the way we used to. It's the most significant loss for us.
It is one of the losses, and you guys are juggling ministry and marriage and have in your story, and you already have just brought us into the picture. It can be really hard to juggle all that, to find time for your marriage.
Yeah, for sure. So
it's been an interesting time for us, for sure.
Yeah.
No doubt. So what question is percolating at the top for you guys here that we can answer?
Yeah, so, as we've kind of just hinted around to, our schedules are weird. The schedules are weird in the house, and just trying to, juggle that. I guess I would say any suggestions that you guys might have on how we could manage our time when how we can manage our time so that it feels a little more normal when
everything's so weird.
It isn't normal.
It's everything but
that is
the new normal, as we all like to say. Yes.
That is such a great question, because time is so subjective for most of us, and we experience it differently. And now we've had this kind of upheaval of our schedules where when does the workday end if you're working from home? And some of us are more disciplined. I'm certainly not. I mean, my schedules bleed into every hour of the day. That's just,
every boundary is blurred. It's just very difficult to separate and compartmentalize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And time is so important. It's one of those topics that is not necessarily one that rises to the top because of, communication and conflict and in-laws and sex and intimacy and all these things. But, time is a huge complaint, even without the 2020 crisis that we're going through. Time has been a big issue. And I remember years ago, Leslie and I going to a bookstore back when people used to go to bookstores, before Amazon ate the world. And we live right in the midst of Amazon here in Seattle. And so I say that with a sense of endearment. But, we browse around in the relationship section of a bookstore, and we couldn't find a single thing on time. You'll find stuff in the business section on time management and productivity, but nothing on marriage when it comes to time.
Right.
Remember that struggle?
Yeah, and it was a genuine, our number one struggle, actually.
Yeah.
So we were really on a quest to, just like you guys are expressing, what can we do to capture this time we're missing out on together?
And that quest led us to, social scientists looking into the research, what studies have been done that are sitting on those dusty shelves that nobody seems to access. And so there's actually been quite a bit of research on that. For example, slow food as a couple versus fast food as a couple. Meals are such a big deal when it comes to time, and how we kind of, that has been a change for us.
It has been a change for us,
Yeah.
just to be able to leisurely gather around the table always.
We call it the hour that matters most in our home every night, and we prize it. But
And by the way, the slow food isn't always slowly prepared. There are shortcuts allowed, but it's slowly consumed.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that pizza, or it arrives pretty quick when you order it. Yeah, So anyway, we did set off on a quest to understand it, and how do you kind of capture the moments that matter most as a couple when you're traveling at the speed of life. Even when you're quarantined, it feels like that, right? And so this is a book that we wrote a few years ago, Your Time-Starved Marriage. And again, our friends at Right Now Media have produced a wonderful study. If you're interested in doing this, it's, I think, one of our most popular studies on right now for couples. But one of the things I think that was most helpful to us, you tell me if you agree with this, is how do you, kind of like we were talking about communication in the previous section, when you crack the code of your personal talk style, when you become aware of your time style. Did you know that the two of you probably have differing time styles? You experience it differently?
That came as such news to me. I don't know how you guys, maybe that was intuitive for you, but just recognizing that Les and I don't experience time the same way, and we don't even use it as a resource in the same way. So when we're capturing time as a couple, it really helped me to understand your perspective about time and how I navigate time.
Yeah, and we have a little model. This will help you, and then we'll illustrate this a little bit and then see how it relates to you guys and what you're going through. But it's a little, and in fact, we talked about Better Love in the last segment, and if you take the Better Love assessment, it'll actually give you your time styles. It's perfect. I just thought of that. But it has a whole page on time.
Yeah.
But let me show you what this little diagram can kind of help you kind of realize. It has to do with two axes. I'm just going to hold this up like that, okay? And the first one here is, are you present-oriented or future-oriented? Now, I want you guys to think about that right now. What are you?
Because I'm all about the present. I live in the here and now. I'm right here and now, and I'm not preoccupied with anything else.
You're not thinking about what you have to do an hour from now or next week. I am just the opposite. I am future-oriented. Leslie says I'm a visitor from the future. I love planning. I love thinking about what's around the corner. I get energized by that. In fact, I remember this happened a long time ago, but we were trying to think about dates, date nights and what do we do and kind of get some on the calendar. And I said, I know what we could do. Let's go out to dinner and we'll plan the next 10 dates so we don't even have to think about it. And Leslie was like, are you crazy? That sounds terrible.
I don't want to plan them and I wouldn't want to do them,
No, Dennis, I saw you waving your hand like, yeah, I'm future oriented too. You get me, right?
We have this thing of when we go on vacation, like the first day of vacation, he always brings up the conversation.
What are we doing next year?
What's the next vacation? I'm like you. I want to enjoy this vacation before we start planning. So.
Dennis, you and I would get along just fine on vacation. I love that.
I
love that.
So that's kind of the first difference when it comes to time.
Are you present oriented or future oriented? And then across here, the crossbars are you subjective or objective with time? Now, subjective means you're not really that scheduled relative to other people. Objective, highly scheduled. And I'm object. I'm scheduled. You ask me, hey, what are you doing?
You've got a grid for your day.
Absolutely.
Everything fits into that schedule.
Right. And I can look on my phone and tell you where I'm going to be at 3:00 next Wednesday, blah, blah, blah.
And you could probably tell Dennis where next year's vacation is.
I can, yeah. Whether she knows about it yet or not.
But on the subjective side of that's someone who doesn't like to, schedule and put time in a grid. And you're not even worried so much about how time actually unfolds. You just like to feel your way through life and, how does it feel?
And you're so subjective with time. I don't even think you measure it accurately. That sounds like I put down.
Because time can feel like it rushes or it drags.
Well, I remember on one occasion, Leslie said, hey, let's go down here to Starbucks. We'll walk down there. It'll be fun to walk down there and get something to drink. And I said, we don't have time. She said, it's only like a 10-minute walk. I said, no, it's not 10 minutes. Like it's a half-hour walk from here. She said, well, it feels like 10 minutes. I'm like, I don't care what it feels like. It's 30 minutes, But that's kind of the difference between subjective and objective.
And usually it lends itself to scheduled or unscheduled.
Right, right. So how would you guys answer the scheduled or unscheduled one? Which one are you?
I'm really scheduled. Like I live and die by my phone, my calendar on my phone. I know where I'm going to be. Everything's down kind of to the minute for me from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed at night.
Yeah. I would say I'm more I guess it's subjective,
right.
But I'm forced to be objective because of my
job.
work and again that whole schedule conversation we started off with just a few minutes ago of how it bleeds into everything, when you're working from home and it bleeds way past, what that scheduled time should be. And so I would, if I was left to my own devices, I would go for the 10-minute, 30-minute stroll down to Starbucks. So love it.
Leslie's so subjective. Like she on her calendar, it's like if you ask her, hey, can we get lunch next Thursday? She doesn't look at anything. She kind of just looks up into the sky for a second and goes, yeah. That feels good, It literally.
I'm grabbing for my phone.
Exactly. Right. So look at this. Here's what happens when you answer those two big questions. And of course, when you do the Better Love Assessment, it goes into more detail on those questions. But you drop into 4 little quadrants here. And so up here, you are, help me read that. Present-oriented and unscheduled. That's present-oriented and unscheduled.
So this is my place, and we're accommodators. We want time to accommodate whatever seems most important right now in the here and now. We don't want to be beholden to a false schedule.
Right. So you accommodate if it's
we'll
sunny out. That might change your schedule. If it's rainy out,
take that 30-minute walk.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever.
Right. And then let's just move down here to the planner who is scheduled and future-oriented.
Yep.
And Dennis, I can guarantee you that's where you're going to find yourself. And that's where you're going to find me. And we'll have a very efficient meeting down there together someday, maybe. And so we call those planners. And I'm guessing, as a good executive pastor, that you are an incredible planner. You are going to help chart the course for your church with your pastor and senior leadership to figure all that out and execute it. You love that. You're energized by that. That's how you experience time. Now, the other two, this one up here, describe the processor.
Yeah, the processor is very scheduled and objective, but they're present oriented. So here's what it's like to be with them. If they've got you on their calendar, when you show up and it's time to meet, they are 100% yours. They focus on you. They're not distracted. But the second their calendar tells them someone else has that slot, they check out on you. They're gone. They move forward.
Right.
So
it's kind of like a therapist. Like, that's all the time we have.
Yes,
so.
exactly.
And then you have the dreamer down here. These are really fun people to be around. They are future oriented and also unscheduled.
Right. So they're subjective, but all about what might happen someday.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have a friend, Rick, who lives south of us, and we always love getting together with Rick and Marva Lee. And I'll say, well, hey, Rick, where do you guys want to go for dinner? And he'll go, he won't name a restaurant. He'll dream up restaurant. Like, I wonder if there's like an Asian fusion place that we could, and that's how dreamers are, right? They want to be creative in that process. So this is just that little grid as you think through, how do you manage time? How do you capture the moments that you may be missing together, even when you're in the same house in quarantine?
I mean, the gift of this is now we get, like, when we have time together, you understand that I don't necessarily want to spend it planning for the next 10 dates.
Which is
and
crazy.
That you might have a plan, but you'll spring it on me spontaneously or whatever. And we've learned to lean into each other's styles. And so we're a little more in sync when we actually do have some time together.
Yeah. So just again, by identifying your time style, and as you'll see on the Better Love assessment, it's not that the point is not to put you into a box.
Right. We're not all one thing.
Because you can be more than one, and you're this way at work
Which
and
is
this
what
way at
Susan
home.
experiences.
Yeah. So it'll give you a percentage and show you each of them and show you your time styles down there. But that little idea, and it comes out of this book, Your Time-Starved Marriage, that little idea was revolutionary for us because man, first of all, it softens the edges, especially around somebody like me that is such a hard-nosed planner, right? It's like, hey, we got to get going. We got to go on. If we're going to do that, we got to finish dinner really fast. Like I'm taking all the fun out of the time that we designed to be fun.
Of my present, which is the only place I live. Yep.
Right. And she's creating anxiety for me. And once she understood that, it's just like, it's that goes back to empathy, that capacity to put ourselves in each other's shoes. So when you do that, it really makes kind of working out your time friction points so much easier around the home. Does that make sense to you guys?
Tons of sense, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And communication would be a huge key of that for sure.
Yeah. Talking through it and going through that. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yes, I love that.
Do you guys have like a secondary, like if you had to guess what your secondary time style is? Like I'm mostly a planner, but I tend to be a little bit of a dreamer as well. This is a different couple that volunteered to share their results, not us. But
probably slide up to the processor.
The processor.
Would you really?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I could see that for your job too, that would be a great gift set. How about you, Susan?
I think I'm accommodator. I don't know. What would you say about me?
Sure.
You could be 100% accommodator, but you get the idea. But you guys, thanks so much for asking the question. It's one that's on everybody's minds, and it's really an honor that you would spend some time with us to do that today. So, and to all of you out there that have tuned in for this whole event, what a fun event, and we're so honored to do this with so many other great communicators, and except for Michael Jr., he needs some medication, but no, he's such a good friend. But anyway, we just wish you the very best, and I just want to give one more shout out to Right Now Media, because boy, do they know how to adjust and get into the place that we need them the most, and then to provide all these great tools. I don't think there's a week that goes by that we don't hear from some pastor or a small group leader or some marriage champion that goes, hey, we just did your series on Right Now Media on on time or on communication or conflict, whatever. And it was such a blessing. And we could never do that without them. So thank you for the honor of doing this once more with you.
It's so much fun to be with you. And we love what it says about your commitment to your marriage, that you're not sitting back and letting this happen to you. You're going after it, and you're getting the support you need to thrive in this
Being
season.
Proactive, which is the hallmark of healthy couples. They're proactive about their growth. So thanks for spending the time with us. Take care.
I love the practical insights that Les and Leslie provided for us. As we prepared to film with the Parrots, we learned about their new research on the importance of being personally healthy in order to be healthy in a relationship. And so in addition to the great marriage insights that they planned on providing, we asked them to give us just a quick reminder of what it looks like to also focus on being personally healthy.
Well, it's always a pleasure for an author to talk about their latest book, and I already feel like we've downloaded a lot of resources in our time with you guys, and hopefully it hasn't been too much of a commercial, but those of you that like to go deeper, at least you know where to go. The new book is a pretty special one for us.
This is really a core message, because this is not the icing on the cake, this is the cake.
Yeah, it's called Healthy Me, Healthy Us, and I'll just say real quickly, the premise of this whole book is that your relationships, your marriage, you as a parent, you as a colleague, you as a friend, your relationships can only be as healthy as you are. And this is a book, we couldn't have written this book 20 years ago. It took us a long time to kind of, realize beyond all the skills of communication and conflict and intimacy and all the rest, it really comes down to you as a person. And that's what this book is all about. It's a really practical kind of stepping stone pathway to getting healthy, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, psychologically healthy.
This book is not about getting the relationship healthy. It's working on who you are in the context of all your relationships. And when you do that, you experience this wonderful inner growth, and everything rises with that.
And so, de facto, your relationships get healthier, but it starts with you, okay? And let's be honest, nobody's ever arrived. Nobody woke up this morning and went, hey, I guess this is it. I'm totally healthy now. I can check that off the to-do list. We're all in process. And as iron sharpens iron, we can help each other in that process. But ultimately, that's the work that we do with the Holy Spirit in our lives to be a healthier person. So anyway, that's the message. Healthy me, healthy us. I appreciate you asking.
Matt Chandler is the lead pastor of the Village Church, president of Acts 29, and author of several books, including The Mingling of Souls. Lauren Chandler is a worship leader, recording artist, and the author of Steadfast Love. They have been married for over 20 years and have 3 children. Matt and Lauren Chandler.
Hi, my name is Matt Chandler. This is my wife, Lauren Chandler. We're excited to be with you today. Have a lot of hope for what Jesus might do in your marriage, as he's worked profoundly and powerfully in our marriage. I was pretty young when I started to desire a kind of marriage. And what I mean by that is I'd grown up around some volatility. And so in my mind early, there was this, my marriage won't be volatile. My marriage is going to be this, this, and this. And then I became a Christian. And then when I became a Christian, I just began to devour any book I could read about what a good marriage would be. And so I started to formulate in my head what this epic Christian marriage was going to be, right? It was going to be full of laughter. It was going to be full of joy. There was going to be this deep soul connection. There was going to be tons of sex. And so that was what was in my head. I mean, that really was. And did you just say, of course?
Yes.
Okay. And so about 2 months before Lauren and I got married, somewhere in there, I started moving to the naughtier books in the Christian marriage section. And so there was this book called Intended for Pleasure. And the tagline of Intended for Pleasure was sex technique and sexual fulfillment in Christian marriage. So then I'm like, okay, apparently there's a kind of Christian sexual technique that you take it. I need to know what this is. And so got that book, and I'm reading that book, and I have that book and some other books on my passenger side truck seat, and I'm heading to Longview, Texas to stay the weekend at Lauren's parents' house with Lauren. And my father-in-law is just a saint of a man. And so I'd driven out there on my truck, and he saw that the tires of my truck looked like Indy 500 cars. Like all the tread was gone, all that. And he was like, my baby girl ain't getting in some truck with these tires. And so he hops in my truck to take my truck to get new tires. He's just that kind of man. And he's driving, and they're sitting beside him on the drive to get his future son-in-law tires, is this book, Intended for Pleasure, a book about sexual technique, a book that I'm researching. He knows I'm researching it now. He knows why I'm researching that now. And so it was a bit of an awkward moment. And then he actually came and asked Lauren, what was the question? Like, tell me, because
He was like, so I took Matt's truck to get the tires changed and saw this book. Do you know what this is about? It's like, you're going to have to ask him about that.
I just think I wouldn't have said anything about it. I would have just gone on about my day. I just can't imagine going up to my daughters going, guess what I saw in your boyfriend.
Well, maybe it was mom. Maybe he told mom and mom told me. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember anyway. It was awkward.
So that was that was kind of my ideal, this is what marriage is going to be. And so here would be kind of where I'm trying to set us up to go. For all of those books that I read and for all the hopes that I had, none of them would prepare me for what would be the next 7 years, getting married and then trying to navigate life together. It was a brutal season, the first 7 years, in a lot of different ways. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But yeah, I would just try to lean into Ephesians 5 in particular as a way to fight the good fight in regards to fidelity to Lauren and fidelity to the Lord. But if I'm honest, and I know Lauren will be honest, we both felt trapped. I remember laying in bed thinking, oh my gosh, is this the rest of my life? Like, is this what the rest of my life is? Because I felt, here I'm in ministry. I've got a degree in ministry, which means basically you're in ministry or you're biggie sizing stuff. There's not a lot of options when that's your degree plan. And so man, I just thought I can't leave. I made this promise, so I'm stuck here. And Lauren's not laying in bed next to me thinking all my dreams have come true. So here we are, we both feel stuck. And I just kept coming back to this text in particular, and want to just read it and talk just a little bit about it. And I'm going to yap, so just nudge me or let me know if you want to add some here. But Ephesians 5, starting in verse 25, it says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. And in the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but he nourishes it and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see to it that she respects her husband. Now, there are some staggering commands and statements in those passages. We see here that you're to love your wife like Jesus loves the church. So brothers, can we just stop for a second? Like, the command on your life, on my life, is to love our wives like Jesus Christ loves the church, in that he gave his life for her. Right? That's right there in the passage. He goes on to say that we should love our wives like we do our own bodies, and then adds to that, if you hate your wife, what you actually hate is yourself. And I know some of you, man, you've tuned in because you're just hanging in there and you're just really hoping that God will do work. In fact, some of you, I know this is a Hail Mary for you. Like you're just throwing the ball and you're just hoping a miracle happens and that somehow your marriage would be salvaged. Sometimes it feels like it's too far gone and it's too far lost. And maybe what you're looking for is best practices. But here he's saying, no, I want to show you something about you. I want to talk to you. Like you hate your wife, you probably hate yourself. And that's what's leading to this resentment and anger towards your wife. And then there's this addition of, hey, you're one flesh. You're one now. You're not two any longer. You're one. And then there's this bombshell here in verse 32. And I think it's the one on which the passage swings or it hinges. And here's what he says in 32. This mystery is profound. And I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. So I want you to follow me here. He just said that marriage, more than it is a man pursuing a woman and two people loving one another and being great friends and being lovers, and more than that, it's a picture of Christ and the church. That's what he said. This mystery is profound. Not man and woman, although we could heartily amen there being mystery.
Lots of mystery.
Lots of mystery there. But the passage is saying, no. Marriage itself, the mystery of marriage, and you could maybe even say the key to unlocking marriage, is that it's a picture of Christ and the church. So when we start to think about marriage through those lenses, through the lenses of, okay, this isn't necessarily about, all the things that I've listed that I want, my needs, my desires. It's not a long list of, she better or I better. It's not any of that, but it's this picture of Jesus pursuing the church. It's this picture of God's mission to seek and redeem and save and woo and call unto himself a people called the church. So I've oftentimes talked about this thing called the Day of Epiphany. And what I mean by that is if you've been around young children, what you notice about young children is they tend to kind of just spend time with the same sex. So little boys run with a bunch of little boys, little girls run with a bunch of little girls, and there's cooties. And for the most part, there's not a lot of cross-pollination. And then the Day of Epiphany happens. And the Day of Epiphany can happen in middle school. Some of you guys, you hit the Day of Epiphany like in 4th grade. You were just an early developer or something. And what happens is the opposite sex goes from that's kind of gross to all of a sudden the Day of Epiphany hits and I want one of those. And now all the rules that we established as bros, that girls were not going to be our pursuit, that it's Rambo and it's, Braveheart and it's Saving Private Ryan and it's Xbox, and it all of a sudden becomes, what's the latest Jennifer Aniston movie? I'm pretty crazy about that movie. I want to go see that. That new rom-com sounds amazing. Let's go see that. And what that is, it's the Day of Epiphany. And although we know biologically what's happening, we know that the male system starts flooding with testosterone. We understand the biological implications of what's going on, but biblically speaking, what's happening is God has put it in the heart of the man to pursue the woman so that he might display on the canvas of creation his love, his compassion, and his pursuit of his church. And so that means when we're thinking about marriage, more than we need to think through the lens of happiness, although I would pray that there would be joy in your marriage, more than we need to see through the lens of, are all my needs being met? The real lens by which we must see marriage is this is a picture of Jesus pursuing his bride, which puts some onus on us men to live in a certain way and to behave in a certain way. But I want to chat about my own journey. I want to try to be really honest and vulnerable in the hopes that it will help, because I don't think, here's what I don't think you need, maybe you do, I don't think you need best practices. I haven't met a man who doesn't know, man, I shouldn't get angry and explode at my wife, but that doesn't mean he's not doing it. I haven't met a man that doesn't know, I shouldn't grow cold and icy like that, but that doesn't mean they can stop themselves from doing it. And so I want to try to share my own story, and then I'm hoping it will be helpful. About probably a little bit before middle school, I began to feel some things that I didn't know how to put words on. There was this whisper in the deepest part of me. I just call that, I think the Bible calls that our soul. So in the deepest part of who I was, there was this whisper there. And this whisper was powerful. It drove me. I mean, I worked hard, I played hard, I trained hard, I studied hard. I researched how to win, and I wanted to win at everything. And that whisper made me wildly successful at whatever I put my heart to do. And so if it was school, I mean, I could be wildly successful at school. If it was sports, I could be wildly successful at sports, because what I was doing is I was being driven by this whisper. But here's what's crazy. It was in my subconscious. Like, I never knew that's what was driving me. I was being like pushed along by this force underneath everything. And I was unaware that it was happening. But I carried that whisper with me everywhere I went. And what was crazy about the whisper is the whisper, for all the ways that it drove me, it continually robbed me. And so what I mean by that is I would, whatever big victory I might maintain athletically, academically, in regards to my career, it wasn't long until that whisper would steal that joy from me and bring me back to the spot where I was before I started the drive to begin with. And this whisper followed me everywhere. It followed me from high school to college. It followed me from college into my marriage with Lauren. And it followed me really into the pastorate. This whisper's just been with me, I think, really since pre-middle school. And the whisper, a few years ago, by the grace of God, I was able to kind of identify what the whisper was. And really, at the end of the day, the whisper was this really deep, not really aware that I'm even thinking it, of you're not lovable, or you're a fake, or you're going to ruin this. Or, those were the kind of whispers that were in the deepest part of who I was. And although that whisper drove me in ways that made my external life beautiful. Like, people would have seen me in our first 7 years. They would have thought, beautiful wife, beautiful kid, church is booming, he's wildly successful, he's charismatic, he's funny. In fact, we were always struggling. People would come up to Lauren and go, I bet you laugh all the time at home. Or, I mean, it was always something like that, right? And yet my internal world was super disordered. I was lonely, I was angsty, I was angry. And the way this would play out is, as successful as it made me externally, it also made me really cruel to Lauren. And the cruelty that I was bringing into our first 7 years is I was always on the lookout for rejection. The whisper is, you're a fake, you're gonna ruin it, you're not lovable. And so since that whisper was in the deepest part of I was, and I know that some of that came from these moments growing up where some of that was spoken over me and some of that was just things that I saw in relation to how people interacted with me. And so it created this wound, and there was this festering wound that now I can just, anything Lauren would do that would trigger rejection, anything Lauren would do that agreed with that whisper, at least I interpreted it as agreeing with that whisper, then I would, honestly, I would act like a child. And so the way I don't wish this, but the way that I would handle this is, it's funny, if you ever find yourself acting like a 10-year-old, and you're like in your 30s or 40s, that's more than likely because of some wound or some issue, because that's how I acted. Around that age in my life, that's when some of this stuff started happening to me, me believing these things about myself at the deepest level. And so when Lauren would do something that had nothing really to do, so let me give a real silly example. If I called Lauren on her cell phone and she didn't answer her phone, my first thought was not, oh, her phone must be in her car, or she didn't hear it ring. My thought would immediately be, she looked at it and she just decided not to answer my call. And then what am I gonna do when she gets home? I'm gonna just ice her out. Like, I'm not gonna scream, I'm not gonna yell, there's not gonna be any violence. I'd seen some of that growing up, I just wasn't gonna do that. So what I would do is just get quiet, and when she would say, what's wrong? I would say, nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, nothing.
Nothing's wrong. Slam, 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 throw stuff in the dishwasher, right? And so I'm acting like a 10-year-old, right? Who didn't get his way. And what was actually happening, though, was I was finding reasons to be rejected. And this is why, the reason I wanted to start even our time together by laying before you Ephesians 5 is because that wound in me that I could hide from everyone else. Like I was so well armored at work that men and women of God that I worked alongside with would say, this guy has emotional intelligence, this guy is put together, this guy's confident, this guy hears from the Lord, and he is ferocious in leading us forward. Well armored there, well armored everywhere else. But at home, Lauren knew that some of that was a shell, and man, did I resent her for knowing that about me. And so that was the impetus of our conflict. And there was no possible way Lauren could fix that in me. See, where I was at the time, this is what was causing so much of the conflict between us, was I just kept thinking, if I could just get her to do what I want her to do, right? If she would just do what I want her to do, then this thing would be fine. The reality is, if she would have done all that and more, I still would have found a reason to agree with the lie, agree with the whisper that it was in the deepest part of my soul. The reason I started out our time together today with the gospel, with marriage being a picture of Christ's pursuit of the church, is that a soul, it cannot heal until it is loved. It can't heal. And Lauren's love is inadequate. Listen, Lauren's an amazing woman, a crummy God. An amazing woman, a crummy God. And so for as gifted and beautiful and fun as she just is a terrible object of worship. And what I was doing is I was saying, I need you to fulfill me. I need you to heal these wounds. I need you to fix what's broken in me. It's an impossible weight and an impossible ask. Now, I know maybe some of the movies you've seen or some of the shows that you like make you believe that there's this person out there that'll make you feel, fully alive and full. And maybe you can get that for a little bit, but the whisper always wins. The whisper always wins. There's this beautiful passage in Zephaniah 3:17 where the prophet says this to the people: "The Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing." Now, this picture of God's response to you and I flies in the face of the way most of us understand about how God sees us. And so most of you brothers and sisters right now, you, by and large, if you're normal evangelical Christians, my guess is you think God's somewhat disappointed in you. That man, he's got high hopes for your future, but right now, man, he's wondering if he made the right decision right now. And as long as that's your belief, that you have a wicked heart and that God's disappointed, and as long as you believe that is most true about you, I don't think you can ever heal in the deeper places, and I don't think your marriage will ever be what it was meant to be, this picture of Christ pursuing the church. So Christ loves the church so much that he died for her, and the church loves Christ so much that she worships him and delights in him for eternity, right? That's a better picture than the one we're being presented in 2020, right? And so how do we lean into this picture? Well, as husbands, we lean into the gospel of Jesus Christ, which means I am beloved by God in Jesus Christ. I am delighted in. I do matter. I will fall short. And my God loves me so much that he is unwavering in his commitment, love, and zeal to me. And so I'm wondering if some of your marriages are on fire right now. If some of it might be either husband or wife, you've got some soul level wounds. You've got some whispers going on in your soul that maybe you're not aware of. Because here's what I'm telling you, I was unaware that was driving me. I could justify my anger. I could justify my coldness. I could justify my iciness. And yet what was really happening is this little 10-year-old boy inside of me was hurting from some wounds and some rejection, and then he was acting out in a 30-something-year-old man's body. And so I would just appeal to you, and I know Lauren's going to share it here in a second, but I would just appeal to you to consider, what do you say to yourself about you most frequently? And if you'll follow your emotions, like when you're really angry, what are you actually angry about? Is it that he didn't put a coaster down? Is it that he's not romantic enough? romantic enough? Is it that she won't have sex enough? Is it that, right? Is it these things, or is there something deeper going on where what you're really wanting is your spouse to be what they certainly cannot be, which is the one who delights in you completely regardless.
Yeah.
So, Elsie, what do you want to add?
Yeah. You know, marriage was always something that I hoped to be in, to be a part of. And my parents both came from somewhat broken marriages. And so they were a miracle, honestly, that they stuck together and they took us to church. And I saw lots of wonderful examples of marriage. And so, you know, I was excited to get married, just like most women or girls are, and had this vision of what it would look like. And I don't think many of us do realize the cost that marriage exacts, but then also the joy that you get in marriage. And, you know, the whisper that I would hear early on in my life was that you're not good enough. And so I would try to prove that wrong. I would try to perform or make the grade or be good enough or try hard enough. Or if I felt like I wasn't going to nail it the first time, I just wouldn't even try. So I was one of those kind of perfectionists. And so I meet Matt, and we're both pretty young. I'm much younger than he is, just so you know.
So true.
And I'm starry-eyed, and I'm not sure I was ready thinking marriage right when we met. I definitely was not thinking marriage right when we met, but I was like, I like this guy. And more than anything, I love how he loves Jesus. And I'll be honest, before we were involved romantically, I'd never seen anyone love Jesus like he loved him. And that's what drew me to him first, was I want to love Jesus like that. I want to know him like he seems to know him. I grew up in church. I was a Christian, but it was more of a kind of a checklist. Let me do this. I didn't feel like I was enraptured in Christ's love. And so we started dating, and there were butterflies, and you could barely eat.
That's true.
I was able to eat, but he could barely eat every time that we were together. And so it was sort of that honeymoon period where really we couldn't do anything wrong. Rarely could we do some things wrong. And then as we got married, or even just engaged, some of these cracks started to show where his whisper and my whisper started to kind of to meld into a lot of trouble for us. You know, everyone's going to bring some kind of baggage into marriage, and whatever your baggage looks like, whatever your wound or whisper looks like, you're bringing that into your marriage because you're bringing your whole person, your whole past into this marriage to become one with that person. And so as we're kind of on our way to becoming one, seeing that baggage, hearing those whispers where my whisper was, you're not good enough. Well, then Matt would kind of say, yeah, you're not really nailing it in this.
It was terrible.
You're not.
Praise God.
You're not answering your phone. Or so then it was, okay, I need to please him. I need to try to be a good girlfriend. I need to try to be a good fiance. I need to try to be a good wife. And it was exhausting. I couldn't do it. But I equated how Matt felt about me and what he thought about me to how God felt about me. That if Matt was happy, if I was nailing it in the wife game, then God loved me and God accepted me and he was pleased with me. And it was just flat out exhausting. And I remember we were still living in Abilene, where Matt was a college pastor, and I actually had a dream, and this woman from church, I felt like I had just blown it in my dream. I'd just blown it. I think I dreamed that I cussed in front of the church. I think that's what my dream was. And I saw this woman who I really respected, and I was afraid of her. I was afraid of what she was going to think of me. And instead, she quoted 1 John 1 to me, where she said, if you confess your sins, he is faithful and just to forgive your sins and to cleanse you from all unrighteousness. And I can tell you, I know I've read that in my Bible, but I don't think I'd memorized it. And so I woke up from that dream, and it was like someone had just honestly given me CPR, had just breathed life straight back into me that, listen, you're gonna fail. You're gonna miss the mark. You're not gonna be able to do this. You're not gonna be a perfect wife. You're not going to be a perfect Christian, but you're loved. And if you just confess, if you just put it out there to me, I've got it. You don't have to strive anymore. And so that for me was the beginning of healing for me. And it took a while before we were actually able to heal in our marriage. But a lot of the healing that came in our marriage was healing that came with Jesus first. It was me facing that whisper, facing that baggage, facing that pain, facing the thoughts that would run through that I can't do this, I'm not good enough. And it's like, actually, I don't have to do it. Jesus has done it for me. And so, carrying that into your marriage is rough. And, I remember you talked about laying in bed and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I remember laying there one night and I thought, what did I get myself into? How am I going to get out of this? And knowing I couldn't, that was the thing. I think when you love Jesus, when he truly is the one that can hold all things together, even when your marriage feels like it's crumbling, if you're both agreed on, we love him, we believe that he's the glue that can keep us together, then there's at least that hope. Like there was at least this hope, I'm not giving up. But that would be a terrible existence. Yeah. I wouldn't want that marriage that we had at the beginning of our marriage. And so it was worth the work. It was worth the digging. It was worth facing these lies and these whispers. And so Matt started going to counseling, and I saw him going to counseling, and I thought, well, he comes from a home that was a little rougher around the edges than mine. I'm probably fine. I just need to read my Bible more. I need to pray more. And if I'm a better Christian, I'll be a better wife. And that didn't work. And I remember we were probably 6 years into our marriage before I started seeing a counselor. And I remember Matt saying, you say you want to change. You say you want something different for our marriage, but like, I don't see you putting feet to that. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm trying harder. But I remember getting up out of bed because we were in bed about to fall asleep, and I was mad. I was like, I'm trying. I remember going out on our back porch and looking at our neighbors and just imagining life is probably perfect for them and they're not struggling or fighting like we are, which I know is a lie. But I remember looking out and feeling so alone in that moment. Like, man, I don't know how to do this. And it was a moment where I cried out to the Lord. And you see in Scripture so many times where God's people cry out to him, and he is so quick. He's so quick to answer a prayer that is offered in humble desperation. And maybe his answer doesn't look like we want it to. Like, what I would have wanted was for him to just fix me and fix Matt and let us have a happy marriage. But instead, it was, okay, go see that counselor, make an appointment, take these steps of being willing to be vulnerable in front of a counselor, in front of Matt, in front of these people that I have for you to help you lead and be led into healing. And so I started going to see a counselor, and it wasn't easy. It was hard. And we were at the Village by that time. Yeah. He was a pastor. I was a pastor's wife. And, at that time, counseling wasn't a thing that people really talked about doing. But I'm so grateful now that it is worth it. It's not stigmatized like it used to be. It's good. It was good for me. It was good to break down those whispers and figure out, why is that whisper driving my marriage? And in particular, why am I equating God's pleasure in me with Matt's being pleased with me? And it wasn't until I could tease that out and see, okay, the Lord sees me as his beloved. He sees me as forgiven. He sees me as his daughter. I don't have to prove anything to the Lord. I don't have to please him. He's pleased with me. If Matt's not pleased with me, that doesn't change any of this. Now, if I have a thriving, healthy relationship with the Lord, and there's something that is going on, I don't have to be afraid of displeasing him. Instead, what I can say is, okay, what's going on? How am I missing you? How am I displeasing you? And then I can have the ability to say, okay, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I'm so sorry I'm not meeting that need in you. Or I can say, I'm sorry, but I just can't do that. I'm not able, because I'm not putting all of my stock and all of my worth and all of my value in what he thinks about me, but in what Christ has said about me, how God loves me, how the Father loves me. And so I started to see myself grow a backbone.
Yeah.
And I remember one scripture in particular that I was reading in my devotional time. It's like, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I thought, what a great picture. I feel like I had been not iron for you to be sharpening against. I was like, okay, whatever you want, however I can please you. Instead, it was like the Lord said, no, I've made you. I have qualified you. I love you. So if there are some things that you need to push back on that, not out of disrespect, not out of dishonor, but out of love, to love him as I love myself too. Because yes, that is a charge to the man, but we're called to love one another. That's part of the great commandment, to love each other and to treat each other as we would want to be treated. And so I became this piece of iron. I started to strengthen. I started to grow to be able to say, you know what? I can't do that. I can't please you. I cannot be that for you, because that's only the Lord's place in your life. Or it was, I'm so sorry. I want to do better. Here's what I need to do better. Here's how I think I'm doing better and what you're hearing me doing better. And so a lot of what marriage has been for me has been the willingness to grow a backbone, and to also be vulnerable with him too, to say, I can't do this. I don't feel like I can do this. I need you to be patient with me. I need to continue growing, and I want to trust you. And putting more energy into my relationship with Jesus, not in just more Bible study or prayer, but also dispelling the whispers, going and seeing a counselor, really doing the heart work that is the hard work, where what I'm reading and what I'm praying about really integrates into who I am, is what contributed to our marriage coming out of that 7-year slump, was us both being able to see, you cannot fulfill me. I cannot please you enough. I cannot fulfill you enough. But the Lord can. And when we come to him and we're honest with him and we're honest with one another, then that's where the marriage grows. And that's how we become one, because that's the whole point. That's the mystery of Christ and the church becomes one. And we are a picture of that, of becoming one, of caring about one another, and not putting on each other what we cannot carry and what we cannot fulfill.
That's good. It's good. Just as practical, okay, great, what's next? Two things. One would be, I think your emotions are kind of a dashboard of metrics for what's going on in your heart. And so when you get angry, when you feel lonely, when you feel sad, I think that's a moment to start to ask the Holy Spirit to show you what's actually going on. Why am I getting angry? Why did that bother me? Why do I want to punish this person? Why do I? So I think keep in mind that your emotions are going to show what's going on in your heart. That's one of the things that they do. So pay attention to your emotions. Like, why did that offend me when she said that? Or why did that offend me when he said that? Or what's really going on there? I felt devalued. Okay, well, why did I feel devalued? I know they actually value me, so why do I feel devalued? And those are the kinds of, that's the hard work that Lauren was talking about. The second thing would be, and I want to make sure I say this, I haven't heard any of the other speakers' sessions. So the thing that can throw a wrench into everything we just said is if you're in a marriage where there's sexual, physical, or emotional abuse. So if you're being sexually abused by your spouse, or you're being physically abused by your spouse, or even emotionally tormented by your spouse, a lot of what we're saying doesn't lay as neatly over that. Now, yes and amen, the gospel can work in that. The gospel can set free. The gospel can heal. But here's what I would say. If you are unsafe in your home, then that I would encourage you to seek the kind of help that will make sure you are safe. And we can work on the marriage once you're in a position of safety, rather than trying to work on your marriage where you don't know if at any moment you might get beaten or raped or emotionally tormented or financially manipulated. And so I just want to say to you that my hope is that you would look in the deeper parts of your spirit. I don't think most marital issues are sex and money. I think they're deeper than those things. Those are just the fruit growing out of the wounded brokenness that most men and women carry. But I think you get into a serious amount of complexity once abuse, you're talking to a marriage that's abusive in its nature. And so just as, I know like somebody's watching this that's in this situation, I just don't want you going home trying harder if you're being physically harmed or sexually harmed. And I might even be triggering things right now, so forgive me if I'm doing that. But we earnestly believe, because the Bible says it, we earnestly believe that because we've experienced it, that letting the Holy Spirit heal those deeper parts of us starts to help you manage the things that you're actually fighting about, that you might need to fight about, in a way that's God honoring and honors the other person in the conflict. And so listen, we want strong marriage. We want your marriage to be strong. We want life to come into it, joy. We want your house filled with laughter and joy and delight. And so we're praying that way, that God would use this little session to accomplish some of that, to move the needle a little bit for you.
Yeah, I would love to pray for them
do
right
it.
now.
Let's do it.
Lord, I thank you for the men and the women that are watching this. I thank you that they tuned in. I thank you that something drew them to this conference.
Yeah.
And Lord, I believe it was your Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And Lord, I know that you want healing and wholeness for your people.
You do.
And I know you want healed and whole marriages. And Lord, I pray for that. I pray for these men and women, that they would first come to you open, crying out if there's just that deep whisper of anything that we shared resonated with them, that they would be willing to cry out to you and say, I need you. I need help. Rescue me. Hear my cry for help. I thank you that you will answer them. Lord, I thank you that there will be marriages healed and whole because of this. Lord, I pray for those that maybe it takes longer than they want, and maybe it seems impossible. But God, you are the one who does impossible things. With man it might be impossible, but with you, all things are possible. So Lord, I pray that you would comfort those that are in the midst of a hard marriage. I pray that you comfort those who might be in the midst of a marriage that is beyond repair because of abuse or something that's happened. Pray that you would just comfort them with your Holy Spirit right now. Lord, I thank you that you wanted to paint a picture of how much you love us and what you want for us, for the church to be one with Christ. And I thank you that you gave it through marriage. Lord, I pray that you would restore marriages for your glory and for our joy. In Jesus' name, amen.
Lauren's prayer is a great way to wrap up our time together. I'm so thankful for Matt and Lauren's story and their faithfulness to God and to each other through some difficult seasons. Events like this one are a great way to focus on your marriage, but we've only spent a few hours together, and you have a whole lifetime of marriage in front of you. I would encourage you to seize this moment to establish some new patterns in your relationship, to engage in some important conversations that can't be ignored, and to celebrate what God has done in your marriage and ask Him for blessing in the years that are still to come. If you're watching this, then you very likely have an account to Right Now Media. And we have a huge library of video resources on marriage and a host of other topics that may help you as you continue to grow in your faith. These videos can be used in your home with your spouse or also in a small group Bible study. You can log into Right Now Media and find any of those resources that would be most helpful to you. As we wrap up tonight, would you join me in prayer? God, we are grateful for what you've done already in these last few hours. God, thank you for the teaching that we heard. Thank you for just your truth. God, I pray that our marriages would last and be built on that truth. God, as we leave tonight and head into the days and weeks and months, even years to come, God, we ask that this night would be a meaningful part of our marriage journey, that you would use what we've learned in the conversations that come out of this to strengthen our marriage, that we would be closer as couples, and that ultimately, God, that our marriages would reflect you, that you would use our marriages and the strength of those marriages to present and represent your gospel to a world around us. So we're asking God for big things in our marriage for our own sake, but especially for those around us. And so we're just asking for you to do that and to make this night a spark point for that. We ask all this in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. Well, thanks again for joining us at Marriage Night.